Thanks. Good morning, everybody. Episode 33, 2 FMA-Nerds talk about stuff. I'm Coach Kurt. I'm your host. You know me. I've been here for a while. I'm bringing on Guro T. Kent Nelson from KSK Martial Arts. And I've been kind of a fanboy of his for quite a while. And when I dropped off for a couple of years, I lost track of him. And then I reconnected since I'm back doing this nonsense. So anyways, I'm going to bring him on and let him tell us. Morning.
Morning. How's you doing? Right. How you doing, bud?
Not bad. We had a little great conversation beforehand. We'll dive back into it here in a little bit, but let's go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a story, and I'll share out the rest of this. So,
tell you a story?
Tell me a story of who you are, where you came from. I mean, yeah.
All right. So I live in Lansing, Michigan. I started doing Filipino martial arts when I was probably, I think, 16 years old, which makes it 30 years. And my primary lineage is I'm an Inosanto guy, Inosanto Kali, although I have a lot of experience with Balintawak concepts and other Filipino martial arts as well. You know, anytime you study with Inosanto, it usually opens up doors to check out other Filipino martial arts branches. But yeah, I'd say that's my main path. There comes from Guro Dan. There's just so many great things I've learned and been exposed to through him and through his just the examples he set. Man, a story.
Yeah.
You know, when I was like 16 years old, I had a friend named Josh Pitts, and he was doing martial arts at a school here in town, and they were incorporating FMA into their classes. And so he was like, hey, check out this. And he started, we would start banging sticks around in parking lots and stuff like that. And he didn't continue with it, but I did. I loved it. I thought it was super fun. And I think I've always, that was my initial seed of it, was this is fun. I enjoy this. And that's how it's been for all the martial arts I've ever done, is this is fun. I enjoy this. And that's how I want to keep it. And I definitely went through my phases of like, this has got to be the most practical, tactical, fight ready. And that's all good. And you should be able to have elements of that to your training as well. But I also think that it's quite personal, and I think you've got to have the fun. And if you don't have the fun, you'll quit it eventually. You won't train. It doesn't matter how good something is. If you're not enjoying it, you won't continue with it. So I look for making sure that I find the enjoyment and the fun, and that I find the fulfillment in what I do with what I teach. And that's about that, man. Like that comes from Guro Dan.
Sweet. I mean,
I don't know if that's a story, but
no, it's great. I mean, yeah, no, it's awesome. So here's the thing that I'm at this phase is, like we were talking before, I just do stuff. And I'm of the opinion, the philosophy I've adopted now when it comes to martial arts and combatives and all of it is the reasons why we fight is based on love. It sounds corny, but if people think about it for a moment, we love this stuff. We're a bunch of FMA nerds. We're a bunch of martial arts nerds. Unless we're actually utilizing this stuff for a profession of arms, this is a really fun hobby. This is a fun lifestyle. But unless we're actually fighting every day, as in like getting in violent engagements in the streets, professionally as soldiers, EP, or law enforcement, we can just have fun and it's okay. And accepting that fact and like giving myself the permission has been very freeing in this new phase of my life. And what it does, it helps like eliminate the ego of like, I can do this. I must be able to do that. I'm better than you. I'm better than them. Like, it doesn't really matter, because unless we're actually going to engage in violence, it's all academic. So, yeah.
Well, you're definitely not wrong there. I definitely went through my stages. You know, I've been, like I said, I've been doing this, I guess, 30 years. I'm going to be 47 in the fall. And I went through my stages of like, you know, I'm in this camp, so therefore I've got to be better than these people over here. You know, I went through all that BS when I was younger. And that has so much to do too with who you're surrounding yourself with and what their viewpoints are. You know, because if they've got those viewpoints and you look up to those people, then you start to follow that, especially when you're younger. You know, and I went through that phase of like, it's like I said, it's got to be practical, tactical. It's got to be able to fight hard right now with it. And that, you know, what age will teach you is that, like, that's a really good mindset when you are of the age to perform that and pull that off and keep that up. But age, injury, time, commitments, all that will slowly pull that away from you. And what you get left with is like, what do I get from the arts? And I think for me, like, as I've trained with different people and kind of found my own place to be, I think one of the things I've really discovered is like finding, what do I get from the arts? And I get not only enjoyment, right, but I get, like, I continually keep moving my body, which is super important as we get older. I use my body every single day. And I don't mean like, oh yeah, like I wake up and walk over to the couch every single day, use my body. Like, no, I teach almost every day. I move my body almost just about every day. At least 2 days a week, I get a good workout in. You know, the other 5 days, I get a mild workout in, just from the act of teaching and being on the floor for 4 to 6 hours. You know, working with people. That's a big part of it. Just staying mobile and staying active. You know, keeping the mind going. I've had some joint surgeries. You know, I had my shoulder rebuilt. I've had 3 wrist surgeries. I got some arthritis issues in my hands from stupid training when I was younger. You know,
whack.
Oh yeah. Just let's just defang away, live stick, no glove. You know, like let's be hardcore. You know,
defang, yeah.
You know, let's be hardcore. And now it hurts to knock on doors. You know, you know, all this right here is terrible. And so, you know, I really like to teach the art, and why I say I like to teach the art is because you can take the art and you can adjust the art to whatever your personal needs are. So if I teach the art of Kali or Filipino martial arts in general, or even if it's whatever, Silat, BJJ, doesn't matter. I can give that gift to you, and then you can say, well, hey, I'm 60 years old. I'm not going to be fighting. I need to keep my body moving and my mind active and form a sense of community. You know, somebody else might say, like, they can take the art and they can be like, well, I want to strip this down to its basic level, and I want to crank up the intensity because I want to get into stick fighting, or I think I'm going to wind up getting knifed stepping outside my apartment every night, or whatever their particular situation is. And some people they're just like, hey, you know, I'm a father of 3, and I'm middle aged, and I got a day job, and I this stuff just interests me, and all those are okay. I think that very often we see attitudes that are like, you know, if you're not hard sparring, then you don't know what you're doing, you know. And we also see these attitudes of like, you know, the people that take it for just the health side of it, and they look down upon those who look at it for like all the hard fighting and stuff. And I said, no, I think you can tailor the art to whatever your goals are. But if you train it for just fighting, when you kind of age out of that gets tough to continue training that way. And if you train it for just relaxed health purposes, and then you want to fight with that, I think that gets difficult to do too. But you can take the art itself and teach those concepts, teach those principles, and then tailor make it to what your personal needs are. So I'm a big fan of teaching the art.
Yeah, it's like the 2 extremes is you got MMA and then Tai Chi. Like people, it's one or the other. When the fact is, there's gradient in between, and both can appreciate as needed for what each other does, because it's all martial arts. It's the mentality, and like you said, those who you surround yourself with to help either enforce a positive group think or reinforce a negative group think. And again, we are who we associate with, and our mentality often is influenced and represents of that group whom we associate with. And hopefully that group isn't toxic, and hopefully the group holds us to a specific standard of being good, moral, just, righteous people, and not just a bunch of assholes. Because yeah, so like,
well, you're gonna get both.
Yeah, I mean, you can have righteous assholes too. So, but what's interesting, like you had talked on about coming out of that phase of fighting, is because fighting, and I attribute to fighting both competitive combat sports and military service is such a limited window. I mean, yeah, you get people who banged it out for 20 years because people do. It's just the life thereafter is, I mean, they've already worn out the warranty way sooner than most people will in their entire life. And so the body breaks down, the brain breaks down, and they just, all that time in the mix, like that's such a very intense time period, which is great. It's awesome in the now, but 10-20 years down the line, it sucks, especially if you get injured. Like in my case, one of the main reasons that I stopped fighting is I have TBI and I'm starting to deal with CTE stuff. Plus, I mean, I have all the other joint issues and soft tissue issues and structural issues that most martial artists have at a certain age. And I mean, I just got a lot of wear and tear. Plus, the army really broke a bunch of stuff as well. So, but that window of capability and of high quality combative capability is so small, is so limited in actuality. Yeah, people can, like I said, people can do it. Some people can do it, but those are very special, keen, high level athletes. But again, life thereafter, that's a tough transition, and also more or less like emotionally, it's a tough transition of like we're hard and dangerous men, and now we're no longer hard, or the perception of we're no longer hard and dangerous men. So there's that. If we don't have the emotional training to deal with that after the fact, that can also be catastrophic.
You know, so this week, Guro Dan Inosanto turned 88 years old.
Yeah.
And one of the things I look at, you know, I think he was 64 when I started training with him. One of the things I really look at is I look at like the fact that he can still move. He's still like he's still sharp. His body's still moving. There are things that he can't do like he used to do, and there are things that he can still do just as beautifully. And so I try to like really look at that example and be like, when I'm 88 years old, I want to still be able to practice my art. I want to still be able to move my body. Now, I don't want that to be misconstrued as like you shouldn't spar, or you shouldn't train hard. I think you should. I think you should do those things. We do a lot in different types of like sparring games, light sparring, stuff like that. But as far as like, you know, let's just grab the sticks and just whip the living hell out of each other, you know, just to see like, I'm kind of beyond that point, mostly just because of what it does to my body after the fact. Like I can get in there and we can bang, we can go toe to toe, and you know, I'll give as good as I get. But the next 4 to 9 days of my life
is hell.
Be very sore. I'm not going to be so great in my other classes. I'm not going to be moving around. I'm not going to be able to demonstrate as well, you know, and where there's absolutely value in that, like knowing that you can still push yourself through those limits, like knowing how to like break through discomfort mentally, knowing how to like commit when you need to. All that's incredibly important. It's just not the only thing. And so like I said, I try to teach the art. And then typically what I'll do is I have like my groups, my big group classes, and then I have a handful of like private students that I'll go different levels with, you know. And again, I also try to teach the student, like in my group classes, I've got anywhere from like, I have like a 15, we have like, I think the youngest in the adult group class, we have like a 15-year-old girl in there. And so it goes from like 15-year-old girl all the way up to, you know, we have a woman, I think in her late 60s, you know, so like, and everywhere in between. you know, so we got teens, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s in the classes. And so that's not appropriate for everybody to just be like, all right, today we're just going to swing as hard as we can at your head.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Survive.
yeah. Some people are there because they want the community. Some people are there because they want the exercise. Some people are there because it's just fun.
Yeah.
You know, and it took me a long time to just accept the fact that like it's okay to do something because you enjoy it without having to worry about what somebody else thinks about your personal journey, you know.
Yeah.
And that's all there is to it. You got to enjoy your journey, because I will say that like the one thing that has been consistent with my journey is changing of my goals as I get older, and as I experience different things and different arts, you know, it becomes less about the gain and more about preventing the loss as we get older.
Yeah,
You know?
and that's the why part, because the why changes over time based upon capability, desire, end state, goals. And that's fine, because like and the other aspect is when we come to totality of our life, whatever, when we face whatever philosophical religious entity or just in general, when we have a counting of our life, it was our life, our journey, and honestly it's the summation of our experiences. One could say to grow is to experience, and our experiences are ours, not anybody else's. They're ours.
Yeah. You
Yeah,
know,
and that,
you mentioned in our pre-conversation there, you brought up Paulo Rubio.
yeah.
And I got to tell you, I've really enjoyed watching his journey over these last few years. You know, and I can't say that I've always been in the same camp with him on every school of thought, but I've also watched his school of thought really broaden and deepen, and he articulates himself really well. And I think he's really important for Filipino martial arts, in my opinion, moving forward. You know, he's a young guy. I don't know if he's younger than me or if we're around the same age. I think he's younger than me.
He's 45, I think.
Okay, so we're about the same age.
Yeah.
But you know, he's able to like talk to the next generations coming in, like put his own stamp on it. Still respects what came before. Is not afraid to innovate and come up with something new. You know, I really hope to get the opportunity to have conversations sometime with Paulo and be able to work with him sometime, because I love the fact that he's focused on teaching training methods versus specific arts, because you know, with training methods, any art could adopt the training methods. And I think that's how he's going to be able to reach out and touch. So I think we're just seeing the beginning of what he's capable of, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I've been friends with Paulo for quite a while, and it is really cool to see him from just being the guy behind the camera with Funker Tactical, and then him started coming in front of the camera with getting beat up by the old men, and now he's branching out. For one, he was a documentarian, and now he's branching out, teaching, and now teaching seminars, and the entirety of the way he's been creating his own pedagogy, and it's really cool. And on top of all that, one could argue without Paulo, there wouldn't be as much of an exposure of FMA into the wider media, because he's an excellent marketer of martial arts. So
absolutely. Well, I think it's because he was those things first, then grew into a Filipino martial artist. You know, where the rest of you know, a lot of us are. I'll speak for myself. I'm a Filipino martial artist that like I use social media and technology as like a necessity in today's age. You know, but that's not like my first thing, my first love. Like I don't sit around and think about, ooh, what's the next cool microphone? Like I don't what's the next awesome gadget on a camera? I don't do that kind of stuff. It doesn't grab me the same way I do it out of necessity. But I think it seems like that's part of him. That's part of his makeup, his DNA, and he's really learned how to harness that. And he's given those powers, you know, to lend them to Filipino martial arts, and has really boosted the awareness, the growth, the mindset. So yeah, I think what he's done is awesome stuff, and I really appreciate it. I think he is one of the few people that straight up will be like, hey, look at all my mess ups.
Yeah.
Like, look
Yeah.
at all the times I tripped over myself trying to make this thing work. And I
Mm-hmm.
think the majority of other Filipino martial artists out there, and myself included, you know, we like to put the best foot forward to represent the art, and it's rare that we show the mess ups, but we all have them, we all do them, we all take that stick across the head, we all drop our stick now on occasion, you know, on occasion, we all manage to somehow accidentally stab ourselves. Yeah,
I'm a big fan.
happens.
I'm a big fan of like the single cut, like just I put a camera, I record, and then I just pull stuff from it. And typically I just do like a long conversation. It ends up being kind of boring in a lot of ways, but if you watch what we're doing, you can see my methodology and what we're trying to problem solve through. And it's not great for highlight reels, but it's educational and value. And just in the same like the mess ups, I mean, this is why I use this little guy as the rubber chicken, because
I love the rubber chicken, by the way.
yeah, same. I love it. Thank you. It takes the seriousness out of it, but it still allows me to transfer or transmit the sincerity of what I'm trying to accomplish. Because a lot of the stuff that we teach and introduce is really scary. Because edged weapons, I mean, we're teaching people how to kill people. Let's just face it. So, but trying to bridge that gap without doing the super high tactical intense stuff with beards, tattoos, and plate carriers, we can actually way I do that is I can show and demonstrate, but without like the super seriousness, because that's a big turnoff for me personally, is like those super serious drill sergeant approach, because that part of my life has gone and passed many years ago, and it ends up being a caricature of what an instructor can be. And so circling back to like Paulo, who is 100% genuine in his shenanigans, it helps give a real person, not a character, but a person attributed to a journey, because we have characters in the martial arts. We just do. Like Master Ken, for example, he's a straight up excellent character, but he also talks a lot of truth, but he's a straight up character, and that serves a specific function. But for the rest of us who are unwilling to act, so to speak, there is this hesitance to put out raw, unfiltered, absolutely genuine material, because one, we have marketing attached to it and leads to business, and also we don't want to look like idiots online. At least most of us don't. So
there is no bigger group of insecure people than martial artists.
yeah.
I mean, like we just got to accept that. Like most people get into, they say most people get into martial art. I have a hard time putting myself in the most people category because I only know my own journey. Right, but they say most people get into martial arts initially because, you know, they want to learn how to defend themselves. So that draws them to it. For me, it was always just fun. It was never like I got to be the baddest fighter. It was like, oh man, I so want to be a ninja. That's how I grew up in the 80s. I mean, we all do. Yeah, where's my black Shizoku? You know, where's my mask? And I was pretty sure that I was going to be swinging from house to house on a grappling hook.
We still can.
Yeah, but I'd hurt for days afterwards. That's a problem. Yeah. No, but but most people get into martial arts for self-defense because they don't want to get beat up, or they think they're going to. That's an insecurity. You're not secure in your ability to defend yourself, so you go and seek something out to teach you how to be able to do that. Yep. Now, I do think that what gets a person into martial arts and what keeps a person in martial arts, for the majority of the people, can be like vastly different. You know, I think that I think most people would get in for insecurity, but I think most people stay in because they do find a sense of community. They find a sense of a better sense of self and fulfillment and pride just by seeing themselves commit to something and get better at a skill. Yep. Even if that skill, whether that skill is a skill that you can take outside of the dojo or the school or whatever, or the gym, or it only exists with inside of it, whatever, it doesn't matter. As long as you feel a growth and you feel that you're being challenged and you're pushing through boundaries and you're having fun, man, that's what matters. With KSK martial arts, we talk about like the KSK philosophy, and the philosophy I always talk about is function, fitness, and fun. You know, like number one, it's to me, it's got to be something that you can make work, right? It's got to be something that like you can train this to make this work, right? Like sometimes people will look at C-Lot, which can be very soft and beautiful, and they'll be like, "Oh, that doesn't work." I've it depends on how you train it. It depends on what environment you're putting it in. I've definitely had it work. You know, you know, so function. You've got to be able to train it in a way to make it work, whether you choose to or not. It's got to be something that can work, right? Fitness. I think fitness is important. You don't have to be a fit athlete, but if you can't physically move your body, you're not going to be able to functionally use anything anyways. So it doesn't matter, right? So like just staying mobile, just maintaining some muscle tone, being able to keep your joints moving, all that kind of stuff, right? And also mental fitness as well. You know, keeping you from depression, keeping you from procrastination, trying to keep positive mindset, you know, trying to, break bad habits.
Discipline.
And then oh my God, the discipline, right? And then of course, like we said, the fun, because if you don't enjoy it, you will leave. That's all there is to it. You will leave. So, I mean, man, what are we doing if we're not having fun?
Right. Because again, unless this is a profession of arms or you're a professional athlete, that suffering is your profession, the 80% of people who do martial arts, they want to have fun. They don't want to get beat up. They don't want to go deal with the machismo gym bros. They just don't want to feel like they don't belong. So the fun element builds that community of like, hey, shared experience. Yes, it's shared suffering, but we're all enjoying it along the way, and we're not beating each other down intellectually and emotionally, and building each other up through this set of suffering. And with that, I mean, movement is life and medicine. There's a reason why I end a lot of my video work with that, because it's true for me, and I can imagine it's true for a lot of other people.
Oh yeah, and that's our mantra. We got right underneath our sign: movement is life.
Yeah.
And that really became evident to me in the pandemic.
Oh yeah.
It's really interesting in the pandemic. So I've been doing martial arts since I was 7.
Yeah.
So in November will be 40 years of martial arts total for me. And I started in Taekwondo, and then I started in Taekwondo, and I went to Japanese and Okinawan martial arts after that, and then I got exposed to Filipino martial arts and JKD and C-Lot and BJJ and all the stuff, right? And I kind of put away the kata based stuff years ago, like when I was in my 20s, and started to get into the JKD, FMA, C-Lot, BJJ stuff. But in the pandemic, all of a sudden, I wasn't allowed to open my school. I couldn't train with my students. I couldn't hold classes, and I started going insane. It was so tough, and just Carenza alone wasn't enough for me. And I actually went back and sought out one of my old teachers from 20 years prior in Okinawan martial arts, and started doing private lessons with him. Behind closed doors and nobody was looking. And learning the Okinawan arts again, like getting back into like some of the Kobudo, getting back into some of the karate kata, and then getting also like into the internal arts and the Tai Chi. And I've actually been maintaining that since the pandemic, and I still continue to do private lessons in it, because it's taught me so much about moving my own body.
Yeah.
And I realized like how important that movement is. And through that movement, it gets my brain going, oh, this could be this or that, and that could translate to this weapon. The next thing I know, I've got pages of notes and ideas, which then translate into lesson plans for my students, and how I think about movement. And so I think all arts offer something positive. And those things that they offer are very different, because we need more than just one thing. But again, I enjoy it, so I keep up with it.
That's awesome. So speaking of the pandemic, obviously you're still a business, and you've found a creative way to continue during that period. But I can imagine like a lot of other schools, that there were some rough patches there. Were you able to get some federal assistance to help keep doors open, or at least some grants with it? And what were some of the creative ways that you actually were able to continue teaching with your students, even though it's remote?
So I'm really lucky. I have an amazing group of people around me, and I'm fully aware of it. I had a group of instructors under me that during the pandemic were doing like Facebook live sessions. They all took turns, like working on different Carenza stuff to try to teach, and so they all got to kind of keep up on their stuff and sort of keep the community connected the best they could. I mean, it wasn't easy. We lost more than 60% of our student base, and then when we came back, so my students are probably tired of hearing me say this, but we signed the lease for this building we're in right now 10 days before the pandemic started.
Yeah.
And this wasn't even like this was still being constructed. This wasn't anything beforehand. I'm the first person here. And so all of a sudden I found myself with 2 leases and I couldn't open up either business.
Yep.
And the construction crews were also like ordered to not work. So like the place wasn't even getting built out. It was a little bit of a nightmare. And that was a tough time. Oh, that was tough. And when we came back, we were under orders that we couldn't. Everybody had to be at least 10 feet apart minimum. You only have X amount of people in class. You had to wear masks. So we wound up doing a lot of FMA classes on like, this is Carenza. This is like, let's work on these different motions. We wound up doing for our JKD classes. We were doing a lot of shadow boxing, and a lot of like, working like Kembangan and things like that. And I think I can't remember. Like I know we didn't start back up the BJJ right away. I think I forget how that got started, but yeah, we did a lot of solo stuff for a long time. I think that I don't know. I was so much innovative as I was just grateful for the family that's kind of come around me and kept this thing going. Guys like Guru Larry Mouton, Guru Sam DeFries, Guru Matt Mondragon, Joshua Forrest Phillips and Claire Phillips were really they were helping out a lot doing like the live broadcasts, and Sifa Katie Hammond, and just I could go through all the names. It's really, I know I'm going to forget somebody. It's all, but man, it was, all those people were crucial. It was not me doing it. It was all those people, all of us together doing it. They probably actually held me up, to be honest with you, because it was tough to sit there and watch my business start to crumble away. And I say my business, but
it's how you feed your family.
Well, yeah. I mean, this is my family. My school is my family. I mean, I adore my wife. She's amazing. She's my rock. But we don't have any kids. My students are the people that I put my energy into. I put my, I pass my experiences onto and my lessons onto. And I love my people. And so I was really grateful that my people were there when I needed them.
That's awesome. And again, that's the whole like give and take relationship that is equal, as to like we're meeting in the same, like I'm going to provide a service, you're going to meet that, and there's that currency exchange, but there's also the emotional social contract of I'm going to help you, you're going to help me, and we both need each other to succeed, and hate to say survive, but to succeed. And where that gets abused, obviously, is where we see the cult leader dynamic of the master and the subservient student who's never free of the master. But when we have a tribe that is not so much about like we have a dedicated leader, obviously there is an intellectual leader, there is a business leader, but when it comes to like the association of we all need to be here because we all need this, and this is how we all stay sane, this is how we all stay moving, and this is how we all belong, find a way to belong. Yeah, it's an economy of equality at that point, and it's beautiful when people can find that, and more. And on top of all that, it's beautiful when that community supports itself enough that it continues to go, especially through hardship. Because I did the exact opposite. Actually, I'll go back a little bit. My business was failing already before the pandemic. As a result of it and a wide variety of other things, I attempted suicide in 2019. Died, survived, but ultimately, there was a lot to it. I have an interesting history, but long story short, I had a suicide attempt, didn't work out, and then I spent the pandemic and the 4 years through therapy, dealing with some serious depression, coming a post-traumatic event, and building myself back up. But during the pandemic, I came completely off of social media. I part my recovery process and my limits of boundaries and that process of healing. And so I missed all the social media classes, all the online classes. I missed the entire thing. And on top of all that, I cut out the entire community from my life. And for at least a couple of years, I sat on my ass getting fat and getting heavy and was not moving, living in that trauma state, living in that depression victim state. And then, like, at one point I came out of it. It's not like a miraculous thing. It was a lot of work that occurred, and it's taken me to this point where I'm actually doing stuff fully and finding that I can love this stuff after forgiving myself and learning to love me. But again, I've missed that entire community connection because I felt I was a failure. In essence, I was. But reframing that is that I felt like I abandoned my people, because like a lot of my students came to me by way of child protective services and working with the addiction recovery community. So I felt like I abandoned them, because like a lot of these kids I had case files with, and I felt like it abandoned them. And so that added to that that feeling of consequence, failure, and just shame. But what I'm learning now, having reconnected with a lot of those past students, that community, is like, they kind of understood, but the fact is it wasn't my responsibility. And learning that it wasn't my responsibility has been super enlightening, but also super difficult these past 4 or 5 years. But I found, in listening to other people who found creative ways to get past all that during the pandemic, it really was about that tribe that held people together. For me, I pulled myself out of the tribe, went into seclusion, and isolated, and caused more of a problem for myself. But I also found my way back, and now I can rebuild that tribe, and I can build it with some pretty solid boundaries and doing with a new light. But with that being said, I'm really grateful and excited for people like yourself who are able to find a way through the difficulty of the pandemic, because there's so many schools and so many programs that got shut down, and we'll never see them again. And I can only imagine. I know, like, the amount of people that have been touched as a result of all that loss, and it's such a travesty for society in general.
Yep, I definitely saw friends of mine that lost their schools. And I try to reach out and tell them, like, hey guys, while my doors are open, if anybody wants to come train here. If any of those school owners, not to be my student, just to come get on the floor and move your body around with other martial artists, please do so. Because, and I think this is, I think about how I want to say this here. I have friends that are martial arts school owners, and we're pretty tight. We got a little circle, to try to help each other out. And we talk a lot, right? And then there are like this other group of people that are martial arts school owners that, like, nobody wants to talk to each other. They stay very closed off. I don't understand what that is.
Yeah.
The irony of it, and I don't know what this is necessarily. The irony of that, it seems like those who do the same arts that I do, that's the closed doors.
Yes,
that's the closed doors. But like, I have friends that that do traditional Japanese martial arts. I have friends that do Taekwondo. I have friends that do other excuse me, that just in general do different things. And I'm able to reach out and talk to those guys and exchange ideas on what's going on here and what's going on there, and like, how do we help this out here? What can I do for you? For whatever reason, those relationships flourish very well. And I don't know if that's again an insecurity thing. I don't know what that is, but what I do know is that I'm very grateful to have those connections with those people, especially the ones that are like other school owners and group leaders, because they understand what you're going through. And you can, and it's really difficult for my students. I can understand what they're going through in their journeys as students, right? It's hard for them to understand necessarily what I'm going through as a school owner. Like, it's a Saturday. They're out, they're having fun. They're doing their stuff right now, like, I've been here for 5 hours working on lesson plans, and after this, I'm going to be here for probably another 3 hours working on finishing up those lesson plans for the next few weeks because we've got events coming up and things, and I'm not going to have the time. And like I don't get paid to do that. I do
No,
that
that's
because I love these guys, you know, because I like having good experience. I want them to have great classes. I want them to come in and have fun. I want there to be a direction and where we're going, you know. And I think that like the people that understand stuff like that, that's other school owners that are doing that that kind of same thing. And so you need you need that those cohorts, that camaraderie. And I wish those doors would open up a little bit more, honestly, with the other people that do the same stuff I do, because I think we could connect even more so, you know. But it is what it is, man, and it probably will open up in the future, to be honest with you. I think for some folks in the beginning, it was, especially with the pandemic, it was, you know, like, who's going to survive this, you know, like I got to put all my focus into myself. And then other folks are like, hey, you know, like this guy's a taekwondo guy, this guy's a Japanese karate guy, this guy's straight boxing, and this other guy's FMA. You know, none of these guys are going to have their students leave to go to the other place because they've come to you for the specific thing. And I think that when you have different schools that are the same art, that's where I think people get concerned about, like, oh, what if they leave my FMA school and go to their FMA school, or leave my BJJ school and go to their BJJ school? And well, that's more of a famine attitude than a feast attitude.
It is, because it's the perceived notion of like scarcity of markets and competition for that scarce market, which, I mean, to be fair, martial artists is such a small niche of the community, and especially if it's a very unique and often obscure art that's lesser known, because of like there's no larger exposure in media, or there's no competitive outlet for it. So yeah, there's the small pool to draw from, and then there's this idea like this is the way, and it must be the way, and because we're all doing the same thing, then nobody can do it our way, but our way. And it's messy. Versus people, like you said, who are of different lineages. The thing that I found with being in the fight world, other fight gyms need other fight gyms, especially if we're working for the same promotion, because we need the bodies to go in the ring and compete. So the market builds on itself, and because there's a competitive outlet and it has a draw, and it's more than martial arts. It's competition, it's fitness, it's, from the business standpoint, it's marketing. So more people who are opening schools, more athletes that you have, more opportunity to train, compete, and build that. But for, let's say, Filipino martial arts, there's such a limited competitive outlet, other than, say, like PCAF, WACAF, sort of Dog Brothers, but it's very niche. But there's such limited opportunity for larger competitive outlets that, unless you're doing this, one, I mean, you have the esoteric art standpoint, which is longevity and beautiful and amazing. But for somebody coming in, they don't know what that is, because they can't, they're not looking at the long term. Or you're coming in,
they might not even know it exists yet either.
Exactly. Or you're coming in for the very profession of arms of, I'm doing this for law enforcement, executive protection, and military, and that's a limited window. But for the average mom and pops bringing their kids in, like, they want competitive outlets, because Americans love trophies, Americans love excellence, competitive people love all these things. And so there has to be a competitive outlet for an end state, and FMA in the wider community doesn't have it, because there's no like uniformed national program unless you belong to certain organizations. It's not like sport karate and sport taekwondo is you have all that stuff, or even jiu-jitsu, for example, or boxing. And where a lot of those methods and sports succeed is more than FMA often is because they have a competitive outlet and they have a lot of bodies to draw from. And this is where with FMA, I find needs to work more on that, but they also have to break down those barricades of saying my style versus your style and that whole thing.
Well, we don't really have, I mean, I guess we do. I know like Dos Pares has their own tournaments, and you know, the Dog Brothers do the gathering, which I think is pretty cool to watch. You know, there's some terrific things you can learn from watching that footage, and you know, including like the dangers of it as well as the fun of it and the benefits of it, right? But there isn't really like a broad like, oh hey, let's bring all these FMA schools together for like an open tournament where we all understand the general rules like BJJ has, there aren't like competitive leagues or anything of that necessarily. I think that there could be. I think personally, I think it would have to do with the structure and the rule set. But I think there could be. But I kind of found for myself, I don't really know about the marketing aspect.
Yeah,
I'll be honest with you. I could probably do a much better job with marketing simply because I'm not a marketing expert. I don't have formal marketing training.
no.
So what I do for marketing is like I literally I we'll just film sections of what's happening in class, and I'll post that specifically because like if a person wants to know, well, what's class going to be like? Well, check out these in-class clips. These happened in class, and if you like the vibe of what you see, or something like that, that's probably what you're going to get. I think that for a long time, there was that feeling, especially when I first opened up a business. You get the business side of stuff, right? Like, you get this thing where it's like, oh man, I get one guy comes in, he's a cop. I get one guy comes in, they're just looking for something fun to do for the summer. I get one guy that comes in and they're looking for like a whole lifestyle thing. I get one guy that comes in, he's got a fantasy in his head already of like, being a Ninja Turtle. I can fully grasp that. You feel like you need to convince that person that this is going to be what they are looking for, right? And the reality of it is you're constantly chasing your tail trying to do that, and you don't make anybody happy. You don't make yourself happy. You feel insecure in your own classes when you're teaching because you got 6 people in the class that all have completely different goals, and so you feel like you're going to disappoint somebody. So then in the end, you have to figure out what is it that I'm doing here, that I want to do here, that I want to pass on here. And the people that enjoy what you're doing, they'll find you and they'll stay. The people that find you that's not their jam, they'll move on. And there's nothing wrong with that because later on, you never know, it might become their jam and they may make their way back. One of the coolest things I can say I've experienced, I started formulating KSK martial arts in 2000. So next year will be 25 years for us.
Nice.
And
Congrats.
next year will be 40 years of martial arts for me and 25 years of the school. So I want to do a 40-25 party.
Sweet.
But one of the things I found with that much time is routinely now, several times a year, I will have somebody walk through my door that trained with me 10 years ago.
Yep.
And life changed. They changed. They had to leave. They've come back. Or people that started with me for one reason, wasn't what they were necessarily looking for. They found something different. They went off to pursue what they were looking for, and then later on came back and said, "My mind was in this place back then, but now my mind's in a different place." And you always were the place that like had this mindset that I have now, and so I want to come back and be part of that. And I think the best you can do is just be true to yourself and your goals and enjoy. Make it functional, have a fitness component, and make sure you're having fun. I think that's the most important stuff.
Agreed. And as much as that is for the student, as in for the instructor, part of that is they have to figure out who they are. And I mean, the motto that we use, it's the family fighting words, is memoir, quest, and voice, as you can see in the banner in the back of the picture. But basically what it states is remember who you are. Caveat to that is you have to know who you are. And that evolves throughout time to a point, but like the core of who you are, that has to be figured out. And yeah, like we change, but there's certain things that we should never change, like our ethos, our courageous, how we're curious and courageous, whether or not we're going to be on the line of good or bad, or moral standpoints. Like those should never change. But everything else, like why I do martial arts, that changes. What I'm learning, that changes. But like that core of like who I am, I had to figure that out and hold to that. before I can share that with anybody else. And it's like the main lesson that I have learned in the past 5 years is like, as much as I say I knew who I am, like, no, not really. So let's strip down and figure out who I am. And part of who I am is, one, establishing some serious boundaries so I don't compromise what I'm trying to become while nurturing and protecting what was not nurtured and protected. And that's what I'm finding now. Like, I can have people come back to me like, yeah, they met me at a certain space in my life where I was either one or the other, and they've gone away and I've gone away. But when I start seeing students come back, or like they reach out to me and we start doing work again, like, yeah, that's cool. I remember when you're younger, now you're older, now we can do more stuff. And that's cool to have that reconnection with an old friend versus like, I have to get your dollar and have to get your mama to pay for it. So, and it's a beautiful place to be at.
I've never been good at the business side of things. Like I'm 100%, I'm 100% the guy, you know, that in the past has been like, oh man, that sucks that you can't afford your training. All right, just get on the floor, you know,
Yeah.
because to me, like, that's the treating people well, or trying to treat people well while simultaneously sticking to your own values and belief systems. I think is so important. I'm a big fan. We've been talking in class lately. A big fan of these ideas of always do your best. You know, be kind to other people and stick to what's important. If you can try to do your best, then you're by definition you're challenging yourself, and it's through challenge we find out who we are, right? So if you always challenge yourself to do your best, you'll find out who you are because you'll see what your best really is, right? Being kind to people is crucial because it doesn't cost you anything to be kind. No. It doesn't cost you a thing. But if you decide like one day, like, I just kind of feel like being a dick today, you know, like if
that's a conscious choice.
Usually, you know, when you make that choice, you know, when you have no idea who you might have snapped at or said something to that you felt justified in the moment, but they hold that with them, and then they walk away with that, and they might act like that to somebody else because you upset them, or like who knows what it is, right? But if you're kind to people, you don't have to ever worry about that sort of thing. You have to worry about like somebody's thinking poorly about you because of something you said, right? People are going to think poorly about you because of their own hangups, their own filters, their own insecurities. That's fine. But I don't want people to think poorly about me because of something I did or I said, you know? And then stick to what's important. I think that goes back to what you said about like knowing yourself. You know, if you understand what's important to you, who's important to you, what's important to you, the ways you think, you know, what you invest your time in, the way you show love. If you do those things, I think you have a pretty good footing in life moving forward. You know, it's if you forget, if you don't stick to what's important, you'll get lost. If you're not kind to people want to hang out with you. And if you don't do your best, well, then you're just at best, you'll just be mediocre. Why would you want to do any of those things?
And for a lot of people, it's because they have to, because this is how they put food on the table. And you see like the difference between the McDojo or just like the business that's just kind of like there versus the business that is thriving and actually engaging and building up and uplifting the community. And that comes from, again, who's at the head of the who's the leader of either and the strength of that leader or the lack of it. And so a big part of that is like being able to read as that person who is the business, who is the guy or the gal, like they have to figure out how to resource all that positivity and maintain it. And for a lot of people who haven't figured that out, they end up on this other side, or they run into the scary middle part where it's not genuine. And ends up being manipulative. And that's actually kind of where I was at for a while, because I was burning the candle at both ends of trying to manage a lot of stuff. And I wasn't fully mentally and emotionally capable enough to actually carry what the weight and burden and responsibility of what I was doing as a community leader and all these things. I thought I was, but clearly I wasn't. So, but figuring that out now, again, boundaries, resourcing, and everything else. But my question for you with all that, what do you find is your emotional resource to make sure you stay true to that core and make sure you don't break down and like your compassion, because as instructors we get to know people and we get to know their truths, and that can wear on us if we let it. And so we run into this issue about compassion fatigue and vicarious trauma, especially if our students come in with trauma and we're still in that trauma state ourselves. So back to it again, what do you find that you resource and how does that work for you?
Okay. Gosh, that's a big question. Okay.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure I understand it so I don't just go off on a tangent on it. So what is my resources for basically
staying positive and
staying positive?
Staying positive and grounded.
I got you. Okay. All right. I'm on it now. I'm tracking. This is gonna sound like complete new agey BS, but I do this.
Yeah.
I have a gratitude ritual that I do twice a day. I do it when I first wake up, and I do it before I go to bed. If I don't do it when I first wake up, I make sure I have a line I've drawn on my daily routine that like I don't get like I have to take a shower before I walk out of the house. That's my thing. It helps me wake up, get my body moving, all that kind of stuff. So I don't, that shower doesn't happen before the gratitude ritual. So I make it a point like to get that in there, you know. And through that gratitude ritual, twice a day, I always start off by like number one, just acknowledging that I'm here. I've got a chance today. The journey's not over. You know, I always give thanks, and I don't just say I give thanks. Like I try to like imagine the faces in my head. I try to like think of. I try to like connect to the emotions tied to each thing as well. But like I always give thanks for my wife because I love my wife so much. Like she is my teammate, and we worked hard to get to that place. And so I want to maintain that and strengthen that. So I need to remind myself every day, she's my teammate, you know, because sometimes it doesn't always feel that way, you know, when we're wrapped up in our own BS, you know, so it's important to remember that. Like, so I make sure that like I tell myself that twice a day. You know, it sounds dumb, but I give thanks for our pets because that's like, I love coming in the house and, you know, at the end of the night and having some little non-judgmental creature, you know, come up to me and just give me love, you know, and that's, and we need that, you know. I give thanks for our home, the fact that I've got a place to come home to. You know, I used to kind of be like, man, look at this small little house. It's still the same house I've been living in for 20 years. But when you're grateful for it, all of a sudden you don't feel that same way. And it's like, oh man, I'm home. Yes. You know, and then you're comfortable in your home and you're grateful for your home. I give thanks for my parents and for my family. I give thanks for my friendships. I give thanks for my KSK family. And I also give thanks for my wife's parents and my wife's support system and her family and her, because that all helps hold her down too and gives her sense of self so we can be the best we are for each other. You know, so for me, it starts with the gratitude, you know, and I'll list off specific names and think of those faces and try to think what I get from them, you know, like what I get from them, but how they contribute to my life, the value that they bring and how I can bring value back. So that's a big part for me. So that helps me right there, starting my day and ending my day, you know, not sulking in my own crap and thinking about like how lucky I am, you know, trying to be true to myself. Like trying to recognize like, why am I thinking this thought? Is this something because I want to do? Is this because I feel insecure because somebody else is doing something I feel like I should be doing? You know, trying to figure out like what are my true goals? But my friendships are really, really important to me. And a lot of my students have become friends. I had an instructor a long time ago tell me like, you know, you can be friendly with your students, but you can't be friends with your students. And I'm friendly with all my students, but I have had students in my life that have become amazing friends, amazing friendships that like my life would be drastically different without them. And that makes me grateful for them, you know, and that makes me recognize like the importance of what it is I do. And sometimes maybe like when I'm feeling like I'm not personally succeeding the way I'd like to, I will look around at my students and I'll look around at the community I've built and recognize that like, oh, I've done some good because I see like when I see students on Facebook that are hanging out together outside of the school, or I see them get together and party, or I come in, I see them all laughing, and they have an inside joke going on or something like that. Like I get to just remind myself that, hey, you gave them that seed to grow that. Like you gave them this place to be able to come to, and you gave them something in common, and now they're off growing on their own together. And I think that's important to, like, I get to see the good that I put out, but you have to choose to see the good.
Yep.
If you don't choose to see the good, well, then you're not going to. You're just going to see all the bad. Just like you choose to see the negative, you choose to see the crap. You choose to see the good stuff too. And I'm not saying that every day she's like, oh my God, every day is amazing. It's not like that, but there are some days that are like that. But on the really, really bad days, they're easier. They're easier because it gives you some perspective, some compare and contrast. And I think that helps me stay positive. That helps hold me down.
That's beautiful. Yeah. To use a phrase from Jocko, I mean, freedom or discipline is freedom. It's an active choice, but it requires accountability and a little bit of.
Is he on the internet? I don't know this guy.
I don't know. He likes to say good a lot, but point being is, like,
good
martial arts it's discipline. Discipline not because of fear of punishment, but for the excitement of sovereignty, belief, and liberty. And so with your gratitude ritual, or a ritual of grounding, appreciation, and a meditative state to find your center, to use those terms, people have a belief in a higher power, whether it is a spiritual being or a philosophical belief system, but there is something that is greater than themselves that they have to connect to, and find that with that there's a guide, there's a way, and they're choosing that. And it's important because, I mean, the fact is, with martial arts, it's mind, body, and spirit. So that spirit can be spiritual, it can be philosophical, but it is still an active choice of, I'm going to put myself into this place and go through this ritual of grounding myself to calm my mind, calm the world, and actually make the choices to be a certain way, establishing those boundaries so I don't let the world affect me. I can put my own affect on the world. And that's in the truest sense of, like, what liberty and sovereignty is. I'm not letting the world control me. I'm controlling my own world. And part of that is, I'm throwing that rock in the pond, but that rock is create a ripple effect. And that rock should be either a rock for good and not just a rock to just disrupt stuff. And when people find that, that's beautiful. And just in the same, like, going through that ritual, like, we go to the gym, we go to a mechanic, we go to these places where we're deficient in that area. And just the same, like, we should go to therapy if we're deficient in our social, behavioral, emotional status. And some people, they go to a religious structure, a philosophical structure to find themselves, the grounding state, and to fulfill those incredible needs to deal with what we have to deal. Because it's not just physical. There's that mental component, that emotional component. I call it the soft skills in a lot of ways. It's not chi balls as much as that's cool, but the soft skills being is that emotional maturity and intelligence, so we can put into context all of this chaos and violence that we're training and teaching and living in. And again, making that active choice not to be controlled by that negative emotional state, let alone that chaos and darkness, that a lot of the violence that we're associated with. So it's beautiful that is your method.
Oh, thank you, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
I really like your take on it, your insights too.
Yeah,
I can tell, like, you've been through some journey. You've had some moments of challenge, and where you had to grow through some stuff in your life. It's super evident in talking to you.
Oh, thank you. I'm talking about gratefulness. After my event, I've treated every day as a gift, because the fact is, and this sounds machismo, but the reality is, at this point, because I have died a couple of times by my own hand. Not from the aspect of, like, fearing what I leave behind, what I'm going to face. It's just I accepted death a long time ago because I was trying to kill myself a long time ago. I'm just done being in that negative headspace that I accept, yeah, that's going to happen, but I'm also accepting and choosing to do what I'm going to do, whether it is to be in that negative space leading to that downward spiral and eventuality, or I can just accept like the universe has got to say and stuff, and I'm just going to take what the universe comes or gives me, but I'm going to present and make choices that I control, and we'll see what the universe does. But yeah, death, it is a thing, but I've gotten past that. It is a thing. I've gotten past like my own fear of it. Now I fear for it I am concerned for my children, my wife, and those in effect. But for me personally, I don't know. It doesn't concern me. I've lived with death as we all have, but like going into the military, yeah, accept it. Dealing with all the mental health stuff that I have dealt with, yeah, accept it. And the desire to do it, I've accepted. Now, after the fact, the gratitude, like
it's a good outlook, man. Like not a lot of people are blessed enough to be able to get that far, to get past that and get to the gratitude side of it.
It cost me just by what I was saying before, the finding that space. Some people don't, and I'm grateful that I did, because the universe really tried, and I tried to like roll the dice at the universe, and I just kind of like accepted that, quit gambling, and everything should be better. But that came at a cost of basically losing everything.
Well, I'm glad you're here with us, man. Because now look what you're doing. Like just simply by having these conversations, you are connecting to a whole bunch of other people, right? And then you're also bringing food for thought, viewpoints, and philosophy to a whole bunch of people simply by sitting down and having these conversations now. You know, so you're serving the bigger purpose now.
Yeah,
you're serving the bigger purpose now. You found part of what you're here for.
Yeah, I think so, and thank you. Because like part of the thing that I ran into is like trying to tell my story to my students, but I couldn't do so because of the caricature and the thing, that the persona I was trying to present, because I'm the instructor, I'm the coach, I'm the master, I have to be this, and I have to be this public leader, and that's not genuine. Often it's manipulative, and I don't get to tell all the stuff that I was dealing with because I was too busy being the guy. And so what this podcast allows me to do is, for one, give the stories and the opportunity for every other instructor who has all these same things, because we're all human unless we're not, to tell these stories to our students so they can actually see, pierce the veil, so to speak, get past the persona and actually see the person. So yeah, because every instructor has these things. Every instructor who has owned a business or has a group, they have all the stuff of the mantle of leadership, the responsibility of the knowledge that they're trying to present, and the effect that they have on their people. They deal with all this stuff, and the student who isn't really checked in, included in, and like has that buy-in necessarily with the social contract, they just see, oh yeah, I'm just here to take a thing, do a thing, but they don't see. Yeah, some of them at least.
Sorry, I think one of the tough parts about that too is nobody really trains you on that.
No,
like that is all stuff you discover once you start saying, oh, I really like this martial arts stuff. I think I want to teach this martial arts stuff, so I'm gonna sign up to teach it. I'm going to pass on these physical skills, and all of a sudden there's all these other things that come with it over time that you're there's so much more that comes with it. When you say, oh, I just want to share the arts, all of a sudden now you've got to learn about business, right? And then you got to also be, for some people, you've got to also be their psychologist, and for other people, you are their and this can be uncomfortable, you are like their beacon of what they look to or look up to, like they kind of idolize certain things, to other people. You're the villain in their story. That definitely happens. And I've been the hero in people's stories, and I've been the villain in people's stories. And I'm aware of some of those, you can't be aware of all of them. It's always cool when you get somebody that shows up and talks to you, and you find out down the road, like 20 years, earlier, you had some huge impact on their life. Mentally, you set some example for them that they have followed for the last 20 years, and like they come back and they're grateful. Like that's a weird feeling, because I was like, oh, I don't even remember that conversation, or vice versa. To find out that, like, somewhere down the road, you hurt somebody's feelings and totally and unintentionally didn't know it. And you just crushed somebody. Now you're an evil person, in their mind, and you're somebody that they caution people about. It's you truly never know. So again, do your best, be kind, stick to what's important.
Yep. And make an active choice not to be an asshole.
Make an active choice not to be an asshole. Yes, that's super true. Yep. And I like that term, active choice, because there are moments where I'll have to, like, take a breath and be like, all right, I would respond this way.
Mm-hmm.
And although that's not me intentionally being an asshole, I don't know that the other person wouldn't interpret it that way. So let me just do the best I can to put this other person's feelings in the forefront, and because this is who I'm talking to. So if I want to have a positive outcome with the situation, I need to recognize who am I talking to and respect their feelings and their position on something.
Yeah, my default is sarcasm. One could say that is my love language, but trying to make sure that people are attuned to that and know that that is a thing. You never know how they're going to receive it. So that part is tricky. So it's an active choice to turn off the sarcasm switch. So yeah.
Oh, I so get that. Just in this video, in this interview, so many times I've almost said some sarcastic quip, just because I feel like that's the language of the Midwest, is sarcasm. I think any coach that deals with really, really hard winters becomes sarcastic. But my sister and I joke. She's older than I am, and she grew up in California. So I grew up in Michigan. She grew up in California. I used to make the joke, I'm the only guy that's an only child with a sibling. And we didn't really get to meet each other and get to know each other. I mean, we met each other when we were younger a couple times, but and different stuff. But we didn't get to know each other until we were both adults, like in our 20s. And it was really hard, because like I can be really sarcastic and kind of rib and play with, play back and forth. And growing up in California, in the area she was in, things are not that way. And so she'd be like, why are you such a dick all the time? It's like, no, I'm just making a joke. What are you talking about? Like, I don't mean that. I don't mean what I said. And so, yeah, I hear you on the sarcasm, man. Like the little Jocko joke there, I love his stuff, by the way. Like I'm always checking out Jocko's stuff. I'm always watching his podcast. I'm always listening to what he does. He's such a great thought leader in getting people to like own up to their own responsibility of whatever situation they're in.
Yep. He is great for that. And he's also one of those break in case of war. So break glass in case.
Case of war.
Yeah.
Yep.
So ratcheting back a little bit. So you're talking about leadership. You have 25 years of your school. And so you've had students that were probably really young and now have come to adulthood. Mm-hmm. And they've stuck with you that long. So, and this is a big part for the conversation for martial arts leading to the future is the next generation. And for some of the more tribal based systems, it's like, we're in the backyard, do this just because, or because my grandmaster said so. In a modern martial arts community, curriculum is a big deal, and part of curriculum is also leadership development to bring people up. It's one thing, like, you've gone through the process, you started as a white belt, now you're a black belt, you learn the stuff, and you learn some of the stuff for the curriculum, but have you learned the curriculum part of becoming a leader in that community? And I'm curious, what is your process, if you have one, and what are some of your suggestions for those who are trying to develop that?
Well, I guess maybe twofold. And I know I'm going to forget one as I get talking about. I'm going to forget the other as I get talking about one. So one we'll call the bow, and one we'll call mentorship. And I'm going to ask you to help me remember that later. So number one, the bow. So I have a ritual that we've done. Man, probably going back to 2003, 2004, so like 20. Oh my gosh, 20 years. We call the bow, and this is BOW, and it just stands for Book of Wisdom, and that's a joking title. When I was 14 years old, somebody gave me just like a journal, just like a black book with blank pages. Yeah. And I was never really into journaling or diaries or anything like that. It wasn't really my gig. But what I did is I used that, and anytime I heard somebody said something to me, heard a song lyric, heard a quote from a movie, something that was, I thought, man, there's some wisdom in that. I would write it down in the book. I would hand write it down, each one down. So like this was prior to the days of I'll just get on the internet and look up 1,000 inspirational quotes, because at the time, like I said, I was 14.
Yeah.
And so I started writing these down and collecting these, and just anything that had some form of meaning or wisdom to it. And when I was teaching in my garage, 20 years ago, I had a guy asked to kind of get into the philosophical side of the arts a little bit more. I said, sure, we can do that. And I had this book. So he started doing this ritual at the end of class, where now I think I've got something like almost 600 entries in it that are handwritten.
Nice.
And I make it a point that it's things that came across in my life naturally, like not just stuff I look up, but it had to be something that came across my life organically for me to write it down. Because I do believe that, like, maybe there's messages we send ourselves, that's a whole other thing. But, and so what we'll do at the end of the night is I'll have a student pick a random number, and they pick a number, and I look it up in the book, and when I read off what that says, and then I have, we say we'll take 3 opinions, and 3 people are free to share what that means to them. Whether they agree with it, disagree with it. I love it when they disagree with it, because that really gets cool conversation going,
Yeah.
And then at the end, I try to put a spin on it that's different than what the other people did. And because it's easy to just be, oh yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. I try to find a different spin, because what that does is that helps me push myself mentally.
Yeah.
And so we call those thinking skills. In KSK martial arts, we have what we call the KSK concept. And the KSK concept is empty hand skills, weapon skills, and thinking skills, all trained together. And not thinking skills in the idea that, like, we're going to teach you how to think. We're going to teach you, like, we're going to indoctrinate you in a way of thinking. It's more of like, no, we're going to talk about these different sayings or philosophical views or whatever from different people. And we're going to talk about what that means to us and learn from each other.
Yeah. And
open up each other's mind, versus like, because if, a friendship that requires you to be in agreement in all things is not truly a friendship. That's Gandhi or something. I don't really know if it was Gandhi, but it's in my book under Gandhi. But so I think we do that to kind of help set up the mindset for leadership, that not everybody thinks the same way, and it's okay to open up your mind and look in different directions and see other people's viewpoints. The second thing was mentorship, right? So like when I bring somebody into my instructor program, it's more of like a mentorship than, like, we don't, my people are in so many classes already. It's tough to get them to like, hey guys, let's add 1 or 2 more hours a week. You're already here 5 days a week.
Yeah,
that's tough to do. So what I really try to do is I try to, like, get to know them. If you're in my instructor program, I try to get to know you personally. I try to spend more time with you. I try to have more conversations with you. I'll pull you over to the side for private lessons just to give them to you, not charging you for them. Just like, hey, let's set aside a little time. Let's work on this material. And I get to know them during that period of time. We'll talk about curriculum, and we'll talk about what we're doing, but, like, we'll also talk about things like what's going on in the student's head.
Yep.
What's going on in your head? What were you thinking when you learned this? Like think about the way this other student may feel. You picked this up super easily, but somebody else may not. And think of, like, what are they experiencing in this process? Or even just kind of getting to know one another, because I think what that does is that builds a mutual respect. And when you respect somebody, you learn by example, because you watch them and you pick up those things. It's I would love to have I'd love to grow an instructor program where you have groups of just instructor classes and camps. And I think that kind of stuff is really good for like the business side of things and for making the curriculum grow. But I think that if you want to form good leaders, I think you got to have trust. You got to be somebody that they want to look at as an example for leadership. So I think you need a good mentorship. And that's something that when I look at the guys that really influenced me, they influenced me because I respected them, not because they sat down and said, here's the curriculum on how to be a good leader. You know, I've actually had a few teachers in my life that have excellent advice on how to form an organization, how to structure your classes, how to structure your curriculum. But man, personally, they were just such difficult personalities to deal with and brought me so much stress that I didn't listen to them because I associated those other lessons with the stress they gave me, you know? And so
that's that effect. That's that ripple effect.
Yes. So it makes me realize, like, again, how important it is to be kind to people. You know, if you're kind to people, if they like you and they respect you, then you can travel all sorts of places with that. But burn the bridge. Doesn't matter how much good stuff you have. If somebody doesn't respect you, doesn't like you, doesn't want to be part of, you know, what you got going on, doesn't matter how good your stuff is. Doesn't matter how good your stuff is.
Because building a bridge, there is an opportunity for an exchange between two factions. Building a barricade on a wall, they may have the same thing on each side, but both sides view each other as a threat and competition because they just don't know. They don't know what the other side has to offer, what the other side actually has, and what the other side thinks and believes about themselves and each other. So there's no collaborative spirit to build a social contract of equality, one could say. And what it sounds like with your leadership program is it's a Socratic method, especially with your younger students, I'm assuming. That's more teaching them to be courageous, brave, and to own up to their own advocacy and to deal with the intellectual and sometimes emotional stress of having their belief systems or their knowledge set being challenged. And honestly, like I said, that's the Socratic method of education. And in my mind, coming from the education side of the world, that is one of the best ways to learn, if not the best.
No, I agree with that. What's interesting is like I'll do that a little bit with our kids' classes. But to be honest with you, that we do that with the adult class, and we just do it at the end of the night because it usually winds up being about a 20-minute conversation at the end of the night. So we can't do it at the end of every class. So, you know, but the irony of it is probably 70% of my people come to all the classes that night. You know, every night we do kids, whether it's kids or teens. You know, we follow that up with an FMA class, then a JKD class, then a BJJ class. That's just our structure. And so at the end of the night, when we're all tired and we're all sweaty, you know, we're all got each other's sweat on us, you know, and we've all felt some challenge and we're exhausted. And then it's the time to work on those thinking skills. And it's really cool to me. It's one thing when you're helping a younger person, a child or a teen try to form these ideas. But what's really cool to me is when you do these thinking exercises with adults and you can see adults that already have formed opinions and all of a sudden they'll hear somebody else's opinion that they respect, that they just trained with, that's maybe different. And they go,
the wall drops.
And it's like, man, even though we have a difference of opinion, I'm willing to listen to that guy because he's a cool training partner and he's a good person to me, you know, versus like, oh, it's a difference of opinion. So therefore now I'm insecure about my side. So maybe I'm wrong. So I got to make sure he's wrong so that I'm right, which is how most people think, you know, but I think when you establish that training relationship, you know, my favorite thing about the dojo, about martial arts, honestly, is that it shows you who you are, right? We talk about like challenge helps define us, right? You want to find out like who you are, be true to yourself, find your own boundaries and all that kind of stuff. That happens through martial arts because in martial arts, you're going to see how other people and yourself respond to something you don't necessarily understand how to get right away. You're going to see how you respond to frustration. You're going to see how you respond. Are you, to losing? You're going to see how people respond to winning. Some people are terrible winners. They rub it in your face. And it's you get to see the goods and bads of other people and of yourself on the floor. But we also are all setting examples for each other of like, how should I be? Like I noticed that guy over there that's really good. Every time he wins, he doesn't do a happy dance. He just reaches out, shakes the other guy's hand, and says, "Hey, man, thanks for training with me."
Yeah.
Like, what a great example to set when you're a winner, And I think that to me that's just sacred. That's just sacred. I love all the like little microcosms, the microcosm of life that the dojo provides, right?
Yep.
And I think I'm kind of getting off in the weeds here because once I start thinking about that kind of stuff, it just makes me so appreciative of what I do. I'm so grateful I'm not in some cubicle. You know what I mean? And I firmly believe that like I'm changing the world by creating better people, even if it's
the world of effect. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. We all build and support each other here.
Yep. And from the adult standpoint, to use a technical term, that's peer support mentorship. There's a equality, equal exchange and input for everybody. And the hierarchy is what we allow it to be. But reality is the hierarchy doesn't really matter when you're on the mat suffering and sweating as a group and a collective. And
that's true.
And I mean, it's the shared suffering dynamic that we often find from people who face combat, but combat sports, there's a shared suffering aspect of this sucks getting smashed on the mat or I'm getting strangulated and can't breathe or just being crushed. But we're all doing this together and we're all holding each other accountable because we both got to do our job. Because if I'm not doing my job 100%, I'm not getting the best training, nor is my training partner, and hold that accountability. So that's peer support mentorship. It's also building resiliency and developing some advocacy. And you're all facing the adversity of the difficult task. And that builds confidence through capability and humility across the board. And that's beautiful when people figure that out. And it sounds silly and esoteric, but the fact is, we need more of that. We have clubs to help develop that. I mean, that's why we have things like Freemasons and religious organizations. But martial arts can fulfill that niche for some people. Just the vehicle which we do it is through punching and kicking each other in the face or strangling each other. But there's that shared suffering and accountability standpoint of this is the goal, here's the outcome, and we all accept that this is what we're going to do, and we also accept the process of how we're going to get there, and we all have to do our job so we can all be there. So
very much. Nothing quite teaches you about yourself like challenge. And martial arts gives you that challenge. But I think what we try to do is we try to make sure that there's a lot of fun and a lot of support along with that challenge. If everything is just all challenge and disappointment, why would you do it? But challenge is just that. It's about being able to sit down and learn about yourself afterwards, talk to other people, and also when you see other people, other students, like acknowledge your growth, that feels really good. That feels really good. I always think that's really really cool. One thing I can say is that we are super supportive here. I don't really run a competition-based school. Like we have students that do like BJJ tournaments now and again. Yeah. I always support them. I think that's great. Anything in their endeavors, but like I don't teach around a BJJ rule set for competition. I don't teach around any kind of rule set for anything like that. We just we share in the arts and we try to make each other grow. And the supportive atmosphere we have here is really great. It's really cool. I love that. There's not a lot of there might be a little bit of smack talk between the guys that have been here like 10 years, but that's because they've been here 10 years. They know
they have that relationship. They can. That's
exactly right. But if you come in here and a higher belt comes to work with you, they're not going to crush you. They're going to flow with you. They're going to be like, oh, let's work on this. Let's work on that. How maybe like to do that. And it's interesting because, we'll have people that come in from other schools and they want to crush. They want to dominate. They want to, it's interesting. Jiu-jitsu is an interesting art to me because jiu-jitsu is one of those martial arts when a person comes in with no experience, I almost make the joke that I think sometimes they come in to prove to themselves that they don't need this.
Yeah.
Because
Yep.
they go to roll for the first couple times and they go as hard as they can. You know, and I'm
Mhm.
like, are you trying to use the lessons or are you just trying to win? So if you're just trying to win, then what you're really doing is you're just trying to prove to yourself that you don't need the lessons.
Yep.
You know, and that by itself is a big lesson to you about yourself.
Mhm.
You know, and
Got to clear the ego. Got to disrupt the ego. Yes.
Yep. That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
It's interesting. So what I find with teaching methodologies when I was teaching, I had like three major approaches. I had the general like kids, that's mentorship, teaching curriculum, that's just teaching little ninjas, little madarigmas, that's just kids. It was kind of safe that way unless I was dealing with my CPS caseworking kids. But the majority, like the kids, belt and keys, it's kids. Then I had those I was teaching the art and educating. So it was a lot of my teenagers, people who wanted to learn FMA, people just want to learn martial arts. And then I had the people that I'm producing products with. That's my fighters, that's my law enforcement, that's my people actually going to use this stuff. And I found like the tonality, I tried to have fun with all of them, but like the way that I had fun and the intensity was very different between the three. I found that like one of the kids that I was teaching and the martial artists, I could go at a lower pace. I can be more conversational. It can be more mentoring. We could actually go in the rabbit trails. Kids, it's herding cats. And those I'm producing athletes, yeah, it's herding cats with little black pellets on the mat because that's disgusting. But with adults that I'm producing, athletes and people who are going to use this stuff, like the intensity and the tonality was so different. And I found that like often that ended up being a little more tyrannical than I needed to be. But it's like, we're going to use the stuff, so we're going to go to work. And when I made that transition for like the martial arts, like my teenagers moving into that bracket where they had fun and now we're going to work, that was a really difficult transition for some of those kids. And looking back on it, that was the way that I was modeled, or it was modeled to me, probably wasn't the most efficient. And that goes back to like the curriculum of which I was raised with, and the curriculum I was raised with in the military as a leadership educational structure. So trying to I wish that I had some different examples. However, the examples what I had is what I had, and it did what I did with it. So it's curious how, looking back on it, how that is a thing. And it's very interesting to see who, with other instructors, like what is their process. And one of the things I've taken away from this is, one, kindness, fun, and that's a beautiful place because you're not forcing people to become an athlete. You're not forcing them to produce a professional out of this. They can be rooted in the love of the art and move to that, but that's not the primary function of your structured curriculum.
Well, I mean, it's your goals, right?
Yeah.
Like if your goal is to help a person become an even better version of themselves,
mm-hmm.
then you've got time, you've got pace,
mm-hmm.
you know, you can and you've got flexibility
mm-hmm.
to try many different methods to get there, right? If you're like, if the goal is like they're trying to win something specific, and you've only, and that there's a date when that's going to
Yep.
happen, and there's a certain amount of time, and you're going to be within a certain rule set, like now things get more defined, and you gotta hunker down. There's a difference between trying to achieve those internal goals and those external goals.
Yep.
You know, internal goals don't have the same timelines and limitations on them that the external goals do. You know, so it's definitely different goals. So teaching a person the art for the art versus teaching a person, you know, how to fight with the art because you've got a fight coming up. I mean,
mm-hmm.
there's a reason why the military does the things the way they do it. You know, you know, if you hand me a group of people and say, hey, these guys are going to be in the fight of their life in 5 weeks, go. Like, I'm going to radically change what I teach them. You know, when I teach seminars, you know, I get 1 or 2 4-hour days with these people. So like it comes down to like, okay, what are we trying to do here? Do they just want to see the art? Are they trying to work towards curriculum specifically? They want to get rank. Are they looking to like just isolate a certain thing? Are they looking to fight? Like what do they want? And I base my curriculum and my teaching methods around that.
Yeah.
Because you gotta know the goal.
Yep.
You gotta know the goal. It's like getting in your car. What direction do you drive in? Well, it depends on where you're going.
Speaking of seminars, so like there's a couple of different seminars that I've seen, and I tell me if I'm wrong or if this is the same track. You have the cultural experience seminars. It's either going to like a GM Bobby, Guro Dan, like you're just there to like taking it all and participate in the community, and there's a highly structured cultural experience. Those are fun. Then you have like fight camp prep seminars where you're just getting beat up and holding pads with a champion or high level coach. Then you have like the super tactical cosplay seminars where it's very much, as stated. And then you have the empowerment seminars, which is my least favorite. Am I missing any or any variations there?
Can you define to me what you mean by the empower? I understood them all except for empowerment. I want to make sure that we're on the same page there.
Yeah, the empowerment seminar that I find is it's the 4 to 6 hour seminar of like, come learn self-defense, learn the cool techniques, and not explain to them that you have to do work in between, that you're not just going to come away with this as a ninja and you can take on the world, but
like a self-defense seminar.
Yeah, we put all the buzzwords and made you strong because the group think, but there's no actual work and play in between stuff. Those are my least favorite seminars, but those are the most prevalent seminars I see in the market. My favorite seminars are the ones like, I'm going to get beat up by GM Bobby. I'm going to get beat up or mentally beat up by Guro Dan. I'm going to go get mentally beat up by Datu Kelly. Like the cultural educational experience. Those are fun. Getting beat up at like a fight camp seminar, those are fun. Cosplay, it's kind of fun. But yeah, the empowerment seminars, my least favorite. So am I missing any, or what do you think?
Maybe the only other one, and it might fall in there, would be like a curriculum specific seminar. You know, like sometimes when I go out to, like, I have a colleague group, JKD group out in Boston. I've been going out there for 10 years. And so often we'll do a seminar based on like, we'll do this is the red level material, or this is the blue level material, specifically for that, to help them get to their goal. Right. But that could be kind of akin to like a pre-fight camp, because you have a specific thing you're trying to get to, and it's just a different subject matter. But no, I think for the most part, I think you about nailed it on the majority of the seminars that we see. Paulo might even be like creating his own specific type, because now he's getting into talking about, like we said, into training methods. Train
the trainer seminars. Those are my second favorite seminars.
Yeah. No, I think you're about right. I think you nailed them. That's how I'd look at them too.
Yeah.
I love teaching seminars. I really enjoy getting the opportunity. I'm always grateful for it. I really enjoy getting the opportunity to travel somewhere and get to meet a group of people that I've never met before. Who then, they get to kind of show me their environment, where they're growing up, and what the food's like there, and the town, and the customs, and like, oh man, everybody, you got to have one of these when you're here in this town, and I really enjoy that kind of stuff, because those differences are actually what make me enjoy it. Like, we all have the martial arts in common, but what makes people individual and fun to me is being able to, like, step out of my own experience and see their experience for a while. And this year I've had the opportunity to do a lot more traveling than I typically do, and it's been a hoot, man. It's been super fun, and I definitely hope to keep the ball rolling. But I'm always grateful to get that opportunity to travel, meet new people, share stuff with them, make new friends. And martial arts has given me a great gift. I mean, I've gotten to go to places all over the US. I've gotten to go out to Portugal, and like, that was an amazing trip. Those are
Nice.
such fun people.
Just going to Portugal alone. That's cool.
Oh yeah. But I'll tell you, Portugal was beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
The food was amazing, but 100%, it was the people and how we were treated and how nice everybody was that made that trip for me.
Yeah.
100% the people. 100% the people. The beautiful surroundings and the amazing food and whatnot. That was just frosting on the cake. It was really the people that made it for me. And I think that really goes for just about every place that I've been where I've really enjoyed myself. If I've really enjoyed myself, it's usually because I've really enjoyed the people I've been around for the last few days.
Yeah, it's like you're going to go hang out with distant fun relations or just hang out with your friends.
Yeah.
Making new friends. Yeah.
Yeah, and being able to talk with people about like, you do what here? That's so weird. Cool. This is how we would do that at home. They make me do what? That's always fun to me. Because it reminds you that like, oh yeah, it's not just me in this world. There are other people with different thoughts and viewpoints and experiences, and it helps give you perspective.
Yeah.
And keeps you grateful.
Yeah, absolutely. I did the seminar circuit in a very limited capacity because I live in Alaska. So we had a small gene pool of schools that I could go to. Plus everything's really distant because it's Alaska. But yeah, that was fun. I don't know if I'm up to doing it now in my life. Now, basically what it is, like I'm going to be in an area. I'm going to go jump in a place and just hang out. And if I'm going to share something, then cool. But rather just I want to go and participate in stuff because I'm in that phase that I can go and just do stuff without the accountability and responsibility of a student base back home, which, yeah, it's fun for this phase.
I hear you. I don't get a chance to train as much as I don't get a chance to train in seminars as much as I used to. And so every once in a while, like when somebody comes around, I make a venture out to train with somebody. I'll grab one of my top students and be like, "Come on, let's go." And like, I don't really want to tell everybody in the world about this. I just want to go and be a student for a day, for 2 days, and let's just go train. And let's not have to worry about teaching everybody on the floor. And you need those selfish moments so that you can like recharge your batteries, so you can go back and you can be a good teacher to the other people. So like you don't feel like you're missing out. And I've definitely had those experiences. It's funny. So like when I first started doing seminars with Guro Dan, like circa 2000, it was always just me and like one friend or one student, and it was just the two of us. And over the years, as things grew, I remember one year I took a group of like 14 of my students to Guro Dan seminar. And I loved the fact that I had my KSK family there. I love the fact that, that we could mix and mingle, but I didn't get to do any training.
Yeah.
I kept going around and helping out other people because my students were, this person was confused about that and help that person out. And it made me realize I was so grateful to have the opportunity to share that with them. But it also gave me the perspective about what I personally get from being a student as well. So I take private lessons once a week from my Tai Chi and Guro T instructor. I travel to Indiana once a month to go train with my jiu-jitsu teacher, Professor Chet Stemmerhorn. I bring out Guro Dan Inosanto, who's under Guro Dan and founder of XTMA. I bring him into Michigan to give me a private lesson every year. So I have kind of my weekly, my monthly, my yearly, where I get to go out and I get to be a student too. Yeah. And that's so important because I think when you stop being a student, just a little part of you dies. Just a little that part that like forces you to be challenged, that forces you to grow. And I can't tell you how many times I've stepped out of my professor's jiu-jitsu gym just going like, oh,
I know nothing.
What am I doing here? I can't believe people come to me to learn. Oh, I'm a fraud.
Yes.
I just get it handed to me. Like, what happened? And then I have other days that are completely the opposite, but it's that perspective that helps you understand where you're at. So your head doesn't get too big, but at the same time, it's important to remember that like you got road behind you too. If you're always telling yourself you're the bottom of the barrel, that's no good. It's just as useless telling yourself you're the bottom of the barrel as it is telling yourself there's nobody better than you. You need to see the road behind you and the road in front of you as well.
One of the things that one of the recent metaphors I've really enjoyed is that we are the apex of the pyramid, the mountain, whatever. We're the last stone. We're not the best. We just happen to be the last one at the peak of that metaphoric thing. But the base of that is all those who came before us, and we're walking that process, that journey to get to the top, to put our stone, to add the general collective. But we don't stay there because we have to go back down the mountain and add to the collective at the base. So the cycle continues. And that metaphoric return to the base of the mountain is us becoming a student again. Because what I find that apex, that's when we're competing, that's when we're teaching, that's when we're doing all the professional stuff, but not actually going through the process. And a lot of people who get stuck at the peak is because of ego, like I'm all this. Like, well, again, you've stopped progressing. You stopped going up the mountain because you're the last stone. You got to go back down the mountain and go up another one. And it's just, putting that into my perspective now has been really freeing. But I didn't see it when I was at the top of the mountain because I was the last stone, and like, oh, look at me and all that I've accomplished. Like, well, now I got to go back down to the bottom again, and that's a very it's a great place to be. So, but I wouldn't have that opportunity if I was still teaching, and that is the thing that I again talk about resourcing as an instructor. I am grateful and happy for you that you're able to go and refill the cookie jar with getting refilling your cookie jar.
I like that phrase.
Yeah. Because it's so important, because you got a lot of these guys and gals who are just constantly traveling, constantly on the road, and that's, if they can do it, that's awesome. But like, they're busy, they're all over the place. Like my instructor, Tuhan Belton, the amount of times he's back and forth to Thailand with his fighters, like he was back and forth between Thailand, I think Texas, Mexico, back to Washington, back to Thailand. Like that happened within a month. The dude is busy, and yeah, it's crazy busy.
So much travel.
It's so much travel. Plus, he's taking fighters throughout the state within the greater like Tacoma area. It's just like, that's busy. Now he's able to resource, but the fact is, like, maintaining that pace and tempo, that is so busy. And
you mentioned him before in our pre-talk there, and like I said, he's somebody that shows up on my news feed a lot. I've seen a lot of the stuff he does. He does some really cool stuff. And you know, I hope someday him and I get the opportunity to cross paths. Most definitely. I got a lot of respect for what he does. He seems like a good guy.
Yeah, I really appreciate him. He helped me a lot in my process and transition from when I went through my incident and coming back, because I was in the process of becoming an affiliate Muay Thai instructor underneath him and going through that lineage when I had my school. Then obviously everything happened and everything went the way it is. Now I'm back to just doing stuff with him, and it's really enjoyable. But as like a way to like intersect and hang out with him is come to Water and Steel.
That's Kelly S. Warden's thing, right?
Yep. Belton is a primary instructor underneath him, so there's a great opportunity to just go hang out there and like join the collective and hang out with the tribe. So that's something like definitely in your bucket list. Come out to Water and Steel, because
Where is that held?
It's
totally interrupted you.
No, it's fine. It's in Washington at Gig Harbor. Happens over Memorial Day weekend, and it's been going on for like 45 years. So like what I've discovered is like it's the who's who of instructors have come in and out of there over the years. And honestly, it's a great time. And what I found last year, because it was the first time I finally got to go, I'm still decompressing it intellectually from all the stuff that was thrown at me for like 3 days or a day and 2 days. But add that to the bucket list.
You're gonna make me write that one down.
I'll send you a flyer.
Yeah, please do, because I know between now and next Memorial Day, I'll get a million things on my plate. But if I can get that date down and see if I can find somebody that want to travel with me, be a training partner, I think that's something I'd like to try, because I've seen clips from Water and Steel before, and he's always got some amazing stuff. And I think I've actually seen clips of Mr. Luba's teaching as well, as well as Kelly, and I know Paulo's talked really, really highly of that camp as well.
Yeah, it's a great camp. Hard to really it's hard to describe that camp because one, it's a garden hose, but you got like special forces people, you got SWAT people, and then you had kids. And there was none of the ego of like I am this, that, and the other. It's like we're all kind of sharing stuff, and we're just doing it, and it's a beautiful like cultural experience that again, it's an equal playing field, and you just don't know who's there until you are told who that is, and then that whole facade of ego just goes away. Like, oh, that's that guy, or oh, that's that gal, and it's a cool experience. So,
yeah, I think I'd like to try that sometime. I really do.
Yeah.
Yeah, send me some information on that. That'd be fun.
Yeah,
that'd be fun. Because you know that means you got to go too.
Oh, I'm. It is my one of two things I get to go do every year. Talk about like refilling the cookie jar. That is my second big cookie of the year.
What's the first one?
Going down to West Coast camp for Balintawak there in Washington. Basically, everything revolves around Washington because it's an easy hop for me. And basically everything I want to be doing is there. And like I said, financially, it's just easier for me to just go from Alaska to Washington. It's easy. So eventually I need to make my way out to Florida. Eventually I need to make my way back down to Utah and go back to California. It's just having left California 20 years ago, I don't really want to go back. So but I missed out on a lot of Phil-Am FMA experiences by not going back to California. But at some point I will.
There's amazing people all over.
Yeah,
there really is. There's so many hidden gems. It's funny to me when I think about like all the names that we know now that social media really helped push out there and like get people knowing. And then when you stop and you think about like, man, there's folks out there doing crazy stuff right now involving ours that we have even no idea who they are yet.
Yeah,
I look forward to that. There's always somebody coming out with some new something. There's systems that have come out now that I looked at and I go, I don't even know anything about that system. Like, but that's but it's amazing to watch some of these people move and go, God, I wish I had the time now. Time is such a big deal, you know, like what do I have the time to invest into, to learn, to train, to get good at, to just enjoy, and then still be able to teach my classes, you know, make my lesson plans, do my traveling, spend time with my wife, you know, like life is balance. That's for sure. And I think that goes back to, again, like you said, knowing who you are, like figuring out those things that supply you with that feeling of fulfillment and who you are. And if you can do that, I think that's where you're going to be all right, you know?
Yeah. Switching to the other side, what are some of those things that like try to break down at the cookie jar? Try to break wear and tear on your boundaries and barricades of resiliency, because that part's also important.
What are the things that break that down? Or
try to chip away? That's some of the things that you're trying to resource gratitude, trying to resource happiness. You're trying to stay true to those ethos, but what are some of those challenging things that like really test those boundaries of yours?
Number one is time. You know, I have a very blended curriculum because I don't have the time to individualize everything I'd like to do. And I'm constantly struggling with my curriculum. I shouldn't say struggling. I'm constantly evolving my curriculum, trying to figure out like, how do we find time to train this? Because this is important, and this is important, and this is important, and this is important. And no matter what you're training, you're not training something else. There's always something that gets neglected. If everything gets equal time, then it's hard for anything to be really well developed. You know, if you split the pie 10 ways, you know. Having said that, though, I think it depends on what your goals are. So time is a big one. Injuries and energy. That's a really big one. Like, I kind of struggle with some back issues. I have some disc issues in my neck and my lower back from stupid training when I was younger. And I'm so grateful for like Guro Dan Inosanto, who's really. Oh, can you hear?
Okay, so what was I saying? From stupid training.
Injuries.
Injuries, stupid training. So grateful for training with Guro Dan, because what Guro Dan, like, he was 64 when I started training with him. And so I've watched him go from 64 to 88. you know.
Man. Yeah.
And so, and every single time I've ever seen him, seminar, class, camp, doesn't matter. He always talks about aging in some way. And, you know, when you're young, I think that sounds like an excuse for not moving as fast as the other guys. And as you get older, you realize that, like, man, that's the biggest lesson. It's not the Kali, it's not the JKD, it's not anything else. The biggest lesson is he's teaching you, like keep it moving as you age.
Yep.
Like that's the important thing. Like, you know, he always said that aging is not for the weak. I can remember when I was 20 years old and or in my 20s and being at seminars, and I'm hitting those focus mitts just as hard and fast as I can. I'm like, look at these other guys over here standing on the sidelines, walking through the combinations. My gosh, you call yourselves dedicated martial artists, you know. And now, you know, now I'm the guy kind of walking through it exhausted. You know, and like, oh yeah, my hands are hurting, my shoulders hurting, my back is hurting. And so learning to pace yourself is big. So yeah, I would say that, like, time and injuries chip away, not having enough time to do all the things I want, all the things I want to train, having to learn to blend things together versus isolate them into really making them how I want them. Those are probably the big things that chip away, you know. Recently it's been more obvious to me as I'm approaching 47 here rapidly, that the time I have in front of me, if I want to develop more stuff or learn a new art, the time I have in front of me is different.
Yeah.
It's more limited.
Yep.
And I don't have the same capacity to pick up things as quickly as I did when I was younger.
Yep.
I may understand it mentally better, but, like, I physically may not have the ability to even develop what I need to, depending on what like, if I were to take a capoeira now, it'd be a very different experience for me than when I tried playing with it back when I was 25.
Doing those 540s, doing those air flares. Yeah.
You know?
Landing after that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I like, you know, you say landing so kindly. You know, I was always falling. Falling was a big one for me. We used to do, I can remember my knees first talking to me when we do, I think it was called negativa. You come down to the side, like, and yeah, I did capoeira for about a year, and my wrist and my shoulder was what made me stop doing it. It wasn't because I didn't enjoy it, and it wasn't because, oh, it's a dance art, not a fight or whatever. It came down to the fact this is something I enjoy, and an injury made me not enjoy it so much.
Yep.
So I had to stop. But I respect it, though, man. I still watch, like, capoeira stuff on YouTube, and I was like, oh, look at those guys go. And I realize that expands now to the rest of my training. You know, to what I have in front of me, I want to, you know, like, I have no desire or illusions that I'm going to become a professional Muay Thai fighter. But there's lots of concepts from Muay Thai and training methods that I can use to help do the best I can with what I've got and keep the machine going. And I think that goes for just about every art. But
yep. The window is limited of peak physicality and capability, and also tolerance, whether it is body and or brain, because your brain's a ticking time bomb, especially in the fight space. You can have a catastrophic, life-changing injury in your first fight, or you can go 20 years without having that and then deal with Parkinson's and dementia thereafter because the road has been long and full of potholes. So, I mean, it's a give and take, and figuring out, again, what is the why, what's the goal, what's the path, and having that honest conversation. Like in my case, of like 200 and whatever pounds that I am, I'm not going to be doing 540 aerials because the landing's going to suck. But I'll push some stuff. Yeah, I'll do some grappling, but I'm not flying through the air. So as much as I want to, I'm not going to fly. And talk about, like, the injuries of capoeira and whatnot, like, in my as a teenager, I mean, I b-boyed, spun my head. So yeah, I get it. The injuries are there. Yeah, my neck doesn't like it. My reminder of my body doesn't like that. And then, like, spending time in the Army, like, falling out of aircraft and things, like, things don't work really well anymore. As much as my brain was like, I want to go do the stuff, my body's like, no, chill the fuck out, dude. Yeah. We have to think about this, like, a week later.
That's one of the reasons why I like looking at older teachers.
Yeah.
You look at Guro Dan, you look at Leo Gahi, you know, you look at I trained with Tadashi Yamashita for a long time. He's 80 now. Got the opportunity to work with Taika Seiyo Oyata a few times, and you know, he died in his early 80s of cancer, actually. But you know, Elio Gracie, who is like 95 or something like that. Like I want to look at these guys and say, okay, what are they still doing? I don't have a desire to be an amazing martial artist for a very short time period and then do nothing.
Yeah.
You know, I want to do this my whole life.
Yep.
So I want to look at the guys that have managed to do it their whole life and learn the lessons from those guys. What aren't they doing anymore? And what do they continually still do? Those are some great lessons right there. Those are some great lessons right there.
And then you got some monsters like Coach Danny Terrell in the comments, who is traveling the world, holding mitts, teaching people how to fight with sticks and knives, and still spending time with us hanging out with the podcast. That's a great way to spend retirement, is he just travels and does stuff. Yeah, so.
Yeah, I've seen his face pop up a few times down here. I'm looking forward to going back and through and reading the comments. I watch him a little bit. I read some of his stuff on Facebook as well. So hey, Danny, thanks for watching, man. I appreciate it. We haven't officially met in person, but I hope we do someday.
Yeah, I enjoy him. I had him on the podcast earlier this year, but yeah, he's wealth of knowledge. Great perspective, and honestly, like, that's the goal that I want to go toward, because I'm fully retired medically, and so I'm waiting on my wife to finish her, or just go on. My wife's a nurse, so I'm waiting for her to be able to go do travel nursing. So wherever she goes, I get to go with and go play wherever she's at, so I can go do the traveling martial artist thing. And yeah, Coach Danny, he does that already. And yeah, it's enjoyable, and it's goals that I'm trying to achieve.
Goals.
Yes.
Goals will get you.
Yes. Last one. I don't know how much time you have. We've been at this for a couple hours, but I try to throw this into it. It's an uncomfortable subject, but the thing about teaching martial arts, especially a highly developed cultural art that's got a strong national tie to it and cultural identity, such as FMA, have you faced any challenges teaching FMA? By being a white guy teaching a cultural art, because there's been that dynamic in certain spaces. I don't know if you've dealt with it, and if you have, how have you addressed it to a positive end state? Because I know we all know that there is a negative end state, but what is your way to navigate to a positive end state, if you don't mind?
You know, I'll be honest with you. I think that has somebody out there said, like, you know, what's this white guy doing teaching a Filipino martial art? 100%. I'm sure that's happened. I'm sure
comment section. Comment section.
Oh yeah, the comment section. I can't say that I've had too many people say something to my face and say, hey, you're doing this wrong, or you're misrepresenting, or whatever. I've not really experienced that too much. Having said that, you know, I try not to interact with people that don't like me. You know, I try to stick with love. You know, I try to do my best, be kind, and I stick to what's important. And you know, if somebody wants to interact with me and wants to exchange ideas and wants to play, and like, awesome, let's do it. And if somebody like thinks that like I'm totally wrong and I'm a piece of shit for doing what I'm doing, then they're welcome to think that. I'm just not going to be around while they're talking about it. So is it out there? Is it happening? Yeah, probably, but I don't concern myself with it, because in the end, I got to do what I enjoy.
It's sovereignty in its core, where you give power and authority to only what you will. Yeah. And that's awesome. I
mean, you can go on any Facebook video of myself or anybody else, and there's always the guy that's going to make some comment based on your 1 minute clip.
You're doing it wrong. They'll never work in the streets.
Has already told you, like, you put up a 30-second clip of introducing somebody or a beginner to a brand new concept for the first time. You're trying to help them get down a little bit of an idea. Like, that's not how that would be. And then give you the whole spiel. Hey man, that's cool. You want to be that way? That's fine. To me, those people sort of like are revealing a lot about themselves in the moment. you know what's weird to me is like I so don't get that. I so don't understand it because I have so little time that I really don't want to waste my time telling somebody else what they're doing wrong, because if there's anything that Facebook has taught us is you are never going to change somebody's mind on social media through a comment.
No.
What? Have you ever read a comment? Have you ever read a comment on social media and been like, oh my God, I've been so wrong. Let me change it all now because this guy disagreed with me. No, hell no. You look at the comment and go, God, what a dick. Like, why not leave a comment? Why not say, hey, can I DM you and ask you about what you were doing? If you don't agree with it. Nobody does that. They just they make their little comments. So as soon as somebody does that to me, they've already kind of shown the quality of their character a little bit to me. And I just don't worry about it. I just keep moving forward, and that's if I wasted all my time responding to all that shit, I wouldn't have good conversations like this with you.
Yeah. It's resourcing. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Because again, it's an active choice to spend the time reading and being affected by said comment. It's an active choice to write the comment as vitriolic and negative as it can be. It's also an active choice just to ignore that shit. That's awesome. Yeah. And the block and delete button's also a beautiful thing as well. So,
I try, and this is where I focus on my own character. I try not to delete negative comments.
Oh yeah.
People disagree with something I've put out there. Hey, that's cool, whatever. Now, when people get insultive, or they insult the person trying to learn or something like that in the video, they just they're not being an inconsiderate idiot. They're being a mean dick. When somebody's doing that, I'll delete and block those people because I don't need that kind of stuff. But I do think it's important that we not just get rid of a comment because somebody disagrees with it.
No, because that creates a... Go ahead.
I mean, that's like what our bow entry is at the end. When we talk about if you got a difference of opinion, speak it. Let's hear it. But it's how things are presented. You know what I mean? It's how you communicate something. I think how you communicate something depends on how it gets heard. Yeah.
Because discourse and disagreement is all part of the discussionary process. That's how we learn. Because if not, we have an echo chamber and we have confirmation bias.
Yeah.
So, people need to learn this stuff. But the internet has proven that people are not learning this stuff because they're not having social interactions with physical intellectual consequences. They can just fire and forget on the internet. So there is no responsibility of etiquette. So, and this is a beautiful reason why martial arts is a good thing, because you can challenge somebody's intellectual authority and then you can figure it out on the mat.
Well, I've always found that there's a guy, you can find him on the intrawebs, named Randy Dufresne. You know Randy?
I know the name. I'm trying to remember what.
So he does Iaido and karate, and I believe he's out of Canada.
Yeah.
But once a month I'm on a mastermind call and he's on too, and we've known each other for years through Sensei Nick Swino, who's out of Ann Arbor, Michigan, and just fantastic guy. And we've had discussions in the past about testings, and Randy and I have differences of opinions on testing students and how they move up in rank. And although we have very big differences of opinion, we've always started our conversations with mutual respect towards one another, saying about what we like about each other, about each other's work ethic and program, and then get into like, oh, I know you disagree with that, and I disagree with this one, and I'll say, well, these are my reasons why. And he'll say, these are my reasons why. And we talk about each other's experiences and how we came to our conclusions versus just saying, no, you're wrong. You're wrong. It needs to be my way. It needs to be this way. And I think if people in general, if we could figure out how to do that as martial artists, if we could figure out how to do that with political opinions, if we could figure out how to do that with anything else, and just recognize that the person that you're looking at that you disagree with, they came to whatever their mindset is, whatever their choice is, they came to that through their own experiences somehow. And you cannot deny a person their experiences. They experienced what they experienced. In my opinion, it's entirely possible to have two people with completely separate opinions on something and then both be totally right, because totally right based on their personal experiences. So if you can share your experiences and explain how you got to where you are, then I think it's way more likely that you're willing to listen to the other person, that you're willing to go, oh, okay, well, I didn't really experience that, but I see why you think that now because of the way you said that. Oh, maybe that does apply to what I do. You know, rather than just as soon as you come off with like that's total bullshit. Well, everybody puts their guards up, and then nobody's willing to give any ground, you know, and now we're just arguing, leaving shitty comments to get ignored. One of the two.
Yeah, it's to use some metaphysical out there commentary. I mean, it's the issue of like our perspective is contingent upon our experience, and how can we determine the reality of either person, because the reality is contingent upon, again, those experiences and those lenses. So we may be operating in the same time space, but we may not be actually exchanging information in a manner that we both are experiencing, because our experiences are unique to us.
Yeah,
weird metaphysical philosophy, but it is interesting because where our upbringing, our education, and experiences will determine our lens of way we look at things, like the sky being blue. Well, it's blue in concept, but is it gradations of blue? How am I looking at it at this point in at this angle? Where part of the country am I? I mean, again, we all for the most part, we're accepting that there's the sky, kind of accepting on blue, but because of all of our lenses and preferences and whatnot, we have different ways to see it. And the same goes with martial arts. We all kind of accept that Filipino martial arts comes from the Philippines. We use sticks, knives, and swords, but often people cannot agree upon spelling, origin stories, and the like. So, but it's relative.
Started on spelling. Oh my God.
Yeah. But that's relative to the perspective, education, and upbringing unique to those individuals. And that's once people get past that or understand that and actually have the critical thinking skills to look at it like, oh, yeah, Philippines, modern nation state, less than 100 years, collaboratively came together after world conflicts and occupation, modern nation state of 7,000 plus islands and tribal subsets and tribal nations. Like, of course there are going to be some difficulties and differences in spelling, because there's multiple different ethno-linguistic tracks to go through. So, but people like to generalize and say, oh, Philippines, how far back are we going with the Philippines? FMA, well, it's all Screama, it's all Arnis. It's like, it gets messy because people don't actually take the time, make the active decision to take the time to look at all of it and actually glean from there what is actually what, instead of just generalizing, because it's easy to generalize.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I think one of the most interesting things to me, it's going back to the idea of like talk about the comments we leave, you know, and stuff like that, comments and the spelling. I think about like when somebody puts a video out, whether it's myself or anybody else, right, puts a video out of a teaching clip or showing something, right? And the only comment you've got to leave is to correct a spelling. It's like, that's what you got out of that? Like, out of all that, you disagree with how I spelled Hubud? Well, what are you doing?
Panan tuken, ponun tuken,
oh my gosh.
Tuken. Yeah.
You know, like that's one of the things I get from like Guro Dan is like, because he'll give you all the different spellings, like, you know, like he'll be like, oh, it's this way, and it's this way, and it's this way, and it's that way. And that was so hard for me in the beginning when I was first starting to learn the Filipino martial arts, because there was like Panatukan, Panantukan, you know, and then Panantukan, and like and then Panan, and then like
Panun and Panunan.
Oh, like how many N's are in it? You know, and then like
depends if it came from Leyte, Cebu.
Yeah, you know, like Hubud, like people will argue with you whether it's Hubud or Hubad, and they'll say, well, one means naked and all this other kind. What? Hey man, I got 20 years of Guro Dan spelling it with an A. I think he knows what he's talking about. You know, but I've also seen him spell it with a U. It doesn't matter. What matters is the lesson, or what matters is the material, or what's happening. And if you're going to argue over the semantics of spelling, and I just think your head's in the wrong place.
Yep.
You know, your head's in the wrong place.
It's a waste of effort is what that is.
Dude.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So what are some of your suggestions for a young instructor trying to come up in the game and to deal with FMA and all of its opportunities? Let's put it that way, both good and bad. What are some of your suggestions?
My suggestions as an instructor?
Yeah.
Like, you mean to build your program, or to build good students, or to
build your program, or just come into the FMA community as an instructor with the intent to build a program? Because there's a lot of people who are like, I want to be an instructor, but welcome to the instructor pool. Best of luck, because the community is awesome.
Do your best.
Be
kind. Stick.
Yes.
It's important. That truly, right? So like, I'll always try to present your best self. Be kind to everybody you meet, even if they don't agree with you. Get out there and meet people. Talk to people. Don't assume that everything you do is, what you do is right for you, but like somebody else could have a different reason for doing the same thing. Listen to their reason too. They're not showing you they're not showing you the right way. They're showing you a different way. You know, like, it's, I think once you get into, I think the big problem becomes once you talk about, well, we do it this way because of that, but those other guys, they're no. You can just say, like, we like to do it this way. You don't have to qualify that by saying why the other guys don't do it, or they're wrong, or whatever. Just do what you do, you know, and I think that's important. I think it's so easy to come into it with, I think it's the insecurity that makes us say one person's doing it right, one person's doing it wrong. You know, because I guarantee you in the next 20 years, you're going to change your mind about a lot of stuff, and a lot of what you do. So I think if you can just do your best, treat people kindly, and stick to what's important to you, I think you're going to be okay. I really do. You are not going to make everybody happy.
Nope.
That is a guarantee. So it doesn't mean be a dink to people. It just means, like, when you come across those disagreements, you're like, oh, okay, cool. I'm gonna still keep doing my thing. You know, I think find a good mentor, or find several good mentors. I think that will help. I think, studying your art is important. I think learning about things outside of your art is important as well. I don't think a lot of people like to do that.
No.
You know? And because I think if you learn enough outside of your art, eventually you're going to find things you like, and you'll fuse them into your art. And then pretty soon it just becomes your art, not an art that was passed on to you by somebody else that you're copying. It becomes how you uniquely move. So I did private Balintawak lessons for just about 8 years.
Sweet.
And I don't really advertise, like, I don't teach Balintawak classes, and I don't really advertise Balintawak, but I do. There's a branch in our curriculum which I refer to as Balintawak concepts, because I mix a ton of those things I learned into my Inosanto Kali foundation.
Yep.
But I can't call that Inosanto Kali when I'm doing that.
Yeah.
We have our own name for our curriculum, and I've come to understand that really pissed some people off at one point. So I call my curriculum Armas Kali. Armas just meaning weapon, so it's weapon hand motion.
Yeah.
And it's a blend of like an Inosanto Kali foundation primarily, with an infusion of the Balintawak concepts that I liked, that I kept, along with some mixed bladed concepts that come from a handful of different arts that I didn't get to do the entire art, but I found value in some things. And if you call it one thing, somebody gets pissed off because they're getting left out. If you call it this other thing, somebody else gets pissed off because it's not purely that. You can't make everybody happy. So I think if you try to make everybody happy, you get in trouble.
Yep.
I think that you should absolutely, when you teach, I think you should give credit to who you learned from and where art comes from. And I think that's about all you can really do is do your best, be kind to people, stick to what's important, and give credit.
Yes. Yes. That's awesome. Oh, that's awesome. Because again, it's cyclical in nature that 20 years down the road, there's a discovery, and the discovery is based upon the preference and the marketing attached to it. Because there's like, again, FMA is fighting it out online, and there's a lot of discoveries about FMA, but it's like, well, the old men, not even like the past 60 years or 80 years, like the old men who fought and killed each other, they figured this stuff out a long time ago, because as a species, we got really good at 4Fs, and that's how we got here. So it's not being reinvented, or it's not being discovered. It's just kind of like mixing and matching and make it work for them. And it just happens to be the vehicle of which we explain it and educate people with it. That's what makes it, in my mind, unique, because it's the difference between a curriculum that can be that you're a clone to the curriculum, but there's no sense of self of it. Like, I do it because my instructors told me to do it. I do it because my master went this way. I do it because the curriculum said so. But there's no like intellectual self explanative process of saying, hey, this is the reason why I do it, because of this is what was taught to me, and this is how I figured it out. Now let me show you how to do it. It's the whole learning how to learn to teach people how to learn to teach. Yeah. It's messy.
I got you.
Yeah.
Well, I have a student and good friend named Ben Eichler, and he does 3 private lessons a week in the morning, and comes to 2 classes in the evening. He trains like 5 days a week, or 5 times a week. He's awesome. And one of the things that he says is routinely is like, when he first started, he's been with me about 4 years now, and he always says, like, in the beginning, I was learning to read, and now I'm reading to learn. So in the beginning, like, just like getting all the movement down, the footwork, the Sinawali, like just trying to figure all that out. He was learning to read, just familiarize. Now he's reading to learn. Now that he has those tools, he can take those tools and go into the actual lessons with them. You know, and it's interesting you say that, because I think about, like, I rewrite my curriculum. All 3 of my, so I have a JKD, BJJ, and Kali curriculum. Just for the adults. I rewrite those curriculums every year. Like, I had different times a year, I sit down and go, okay, I'm going to go back through this and see, what do I believe now? The curriculum I taught 10 years ago, the structure of it, even though the material is the same, the structure of it is very different than what I do now. And now I have these generations of people under me that, like, they understood it. They understand it how I taught it 5 years ago. And now I'm doing it a totally different way. And they don't see it the way I do it now. They see it that old way. But that's okay, because that was their lens. And so, like, I recognize that as I create more generations of people that are going to teach, I'll always see it differently than they will, because I'm always moving forward in my thinking process, you know, and that they're going to see it differently. So I'll never have clones. So we'll always be different. And I think that's one of the strengths when Guro Dan said, like, you know, I'm not, you know, like I said, the students, we call it Inosanto Kali, the followers, but he just calls it Filipino martial arts. You know, because it's just Filipino martial arts, and everybody's going to see it differently. So many of us are out there teaching the exact same physical techniques, but we're teaching the structure of it mentally different. Like what's important, what the focus is on, what you should and shouldn't be paying more attention to, or more time to, or less time to. We're all teaching the same ideas. We're just teaching it through different lenses. That's it.
Which, using your students' analogy, I could add to that once he has learned how to read to teach, from there he can be creative with what he has learned to teach. And that's actually that is the great part of seeing where a student or an instructor's at, where they're being creative with that self-expression and creating art. That's a cool phase, but they can still harken back to the curriculum and how to teach and understanding the fundamentals. Because to do art, unless you're just throwing stuff at the wall, you got to understand the technical mechanics of applying brush to canvas, or putting words on paper, and doing narrative structure. You have to know those things to create something that's coherent and understandable, but can be unique to your expression, your experience, and your preferences, which when somebody can get there, that's cool.
Yeah, I like that actually. You gotta learn to read so you can read and learn so you can learn to create. I love it.
Yeah. Occasionally I have something pop out great. So here's fun. Okay, we've been at this, but I'm going to throw this last one at you because you're of the Inosanto lineage. When the term Filipino martial arts has been coined this is my understanding. Filipino martial arts is really kind of an invention of Guro Dan's genius. Like his statement, like I'm just calling this because the whole like etymological issues of language structure and naming stuff, whether it's Arnese, Kali, Eskrima, etc., by generally saying it's Filipino martial arts allows it to be everything. It may be incorrect, but what I'm getting at is this issue about Filipino martial arts. The question being is, what is Filipino martial arts? And the things that I've seen is like it can be just about anything as long as it's a Filipino martial artist or a Filipino doing it. But that lends to the thing of like, what is the core of Filipino martial arts? Because kind of like Chinese martial arts, with all of its variety, it's tied to a specific ethno culture and methodology from that. But is it Kung Fu? Is it Chinese martial arts if a non-Chinese person is doing it? And the answer is yes, as long as they keep harkening back. So with FMA, I'm constantly trying to figure out with people and their belief, their understanding is Filipino martial arts, what is it and what can it be? That's a big question.
Yeah, I like your short, succinct questions.
Yes. I ramble because
So I think that that's a good question, because I've heard people say it like, you know, like if it got developed in the United States, is it still a Filipino martial art? So I think it has to do with like what was the beginning, what was the root, what was the core that it grew from. You know, if the seed came from Filipino martial arts, Filipino culture, I think you can still harken it back to Filipino martial arts. You know, if especially like if you teach a cultural component with it, if you're using elements of the language, if you're using it to teach elements of the history, you know, I absolutely think you can still call it a Filipino martial art. You know, if you are just, you know, like an American guy with no official Kali training ever, who decided to pick up a knife and you and your buddy over the next 10 years, you know, do a bunch of research on trying to stab each other, and you don't look at other martial arts necessarily, you just figure it all out on your own, you wouldn't call that a Filipino martial art, even though it's a knife fighting art. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So I think that if you have the cultural component to it, or if you can trace it back to the initial seed of your research started with Filipino martial arts. You know, so because I think it's really common just to be like, oh, anything with a stick and with a knife is Filipino martial arts. Well, that's not entirely true. I mean, the Okinawans, they have double stick work they call tanbo, which is not Filipino martial arts. They have, you know, tantu-jitsu, which is their knife work. That's not Filipino martial arts. You know, people have developed and created and used knives the world over. It's kind of like a unifying thing of technology throughout our species. Everybody's picked up a stick at one point in our history. They hit something with it. So every culture has developed a means to use said stick because as a tool, it's a universal tool. It's just, again, marketing has changed that dynamic or tries to corner the market on that. I think it's just the lens of which you choose to see it through. You know, I think that, you know, it's just I mean, you look at the what's it, the Makalele and Capoeira, their stick fighting and machete fighting. You know, it's like, is that or their dance with it? You know, is that, some people look at that and go, oh, they're just doing Kali. No. That's their thing. That's their development. You know, but I think, you know, maybe had a Filipino initially shown, you know, the Capoeira founders like their stuff, and then could Capoeira claim it to be like, oh, this is Brazilian Filipino? Sure, but it doesn't really matter. We get hung up on that kind of stuff, man. We get hung up on that kind of stuff. for me, I think it's important to refer to as Filipino martial arts because it gives the credit back to my instructors.
Yep.
And that's the most important thing for me is it gives the credit back to my instructors because like, I mentioned Guro Dan a lot because he's the most prominent, but I've had a lot of teachers and I'm grateful for the teachers because what they've done is they've been able to pass on things to me that I've been able to create a community around me with. I've been able to create an ability to support myself with and create a living with that I've found fulfillment and purpose in. And so, man, you got to give credit back. Yep. And so for me, it's Filipino martial arts because that's what my instructors call it as well. Even if you learn from all Americans, you know what I'm saying? So it's still Filipino martial arts if that's the seed, if that's where it came back through. That's where it's
the whole base of the mountain, the apex, and coming back down to it.
There you go.
That's awesome. Well, I appreciate.
Where do your stones start?
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Well, I really appreciate your time and your willingness to share your insight and your information and your story with us. I know we could keep going on and on and on, but again, time is a valuable thing and it's a gift to share it. But I don't want to take you away too much from your prep for class. I don't know if you got your class scheduled for the rest of Saturday. So
I have 10 weeks of JKD striking and 10 weeks of JKD clinching. I still have to get written out by the end of the day.
Nice. Well, I won't keep you from it, but is there anything that that you want to put out for the audience, stuff that's coming up that I can share for you or that you want to close with?
Stuff that I want to put out to the audience, like marketing stuff, you mean?
Sure. I mean, do you have any events, any seminars or anything like that, or anything that you want to share out for a final thought?
This Saturday, or not today, but a week from today, August 3rd, my jiu-jitsu teacher will be here at my school, Professor Chet Skamahorn. He'll be here to teach a seminar in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I know we've put out a few different things on on our website as far as like downloadable courses recently that folks might want to check out. And we are currently working on filming an entirely new online learning center for the future. We've been working on that for a while, so we're going to do an online learning center section for JKD concepts as well as Filipino martial arts. And so that'll cover Junfan, that'll cover Silat, that'll cover clinching, cover elements of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. We're trying to make a new stamp for the future.
Sweet.
And if you don't mind, when we get done with this call, I got a question for you personally off the air.
Cool. All sweet. Well, seeing some love here in the commentary. Coach Danny saying hopefully meet up with you sometime. Actually, Coach Danny, since you're retired, you can drive to him and hang out because that would be awesome. Well, again, I appreciate you. I'm going to drop you back down. We'll close out, and I'll just hang out in the lobby real quick.
Hey, thank you for this opportunity, brother.
Appreciate you. Thank you. All right, one sec. Well, hello, everybody, or I should say, we've come to an end. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out here with me and Guro Kent. This has been a highly educational and enjoyable conversation as I have with everybody, but I'm really grateful for the time that I get to spend and meet a new friend and expand my intellectual and personal horizon. So I'm glad you guys got to hang out with us. I'm grateful everybody shared and had in the conversation in the commentary. Do the marketing thing, push it all out there. I'm not going to do a long outro because I'm going to edit this anyway. So everybody have a wonderful day and we'll see you later. I'm going to hit the button.